Me and my sore head.
Me and my sore head in Auschwitz. Welcome. This is not the Red Eye, but close enough. This is Mad Dodge Productions. It's a late night bullshit stream. I think tonight we might talk a little bit about John Brown and his failed revolution. We might make fun of MC and his Yankee Nation. And I might poke a few fucking jabs at the Brit over there. Hi, Cabbage. How are you tonight?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well, especially considering that my American opponent is acting like a total pussy because he's got a headache.
Well, has the Queen eaten any babies lately, Cabbage?
I don't know. Have you posted any recently?
No, I did not sell her any children.
Wow.
No,
We only have your
if I
word for
did,
that.
I wouldn't tell you. Yeah, I
It
wouldn't
seems
tell
a
you
lot
if I did.
quieter in the background, mate. It seems like you've lost a couple at least.
Yeah, well, maybe I had a correspondence with the Queen. Long live the Queen.
Were they cryogenic or did you do them fresh?
You would know that. Don't you use a pitchfork to pitch them in?
Yeah.
No, you
the Tower
don't.
of London.
You don't pitch the children. You don't want to burst the spleen or anything. You spoil the meat. Sorry, was that too much?
Oh no! I was just clicking on my thing so I could check the
You're
chat.
still playing fucking
But
video games. God almighty.
I am not playing video games. God damn it!
Yeah, you
That was just on
fucking
Discord earlier.
Civ
Oh,
bag.
Cabbage! The Braves beat me like 9-0
Cabbage.
earlier. It was horrible. Fuck that game. I got mad and I exited out. I was like down 10-0. I was like, fuck this.
MC, he was talking about sliding into somebody's base. It sounded perverted, really.
He does have 6 kids. He's got lots of practice.
Certainly slid into a few bases, that's for sure.
I could definitely steal home, you know what I'm saying?
Steal it, you're paying for it.
Oh, damn. All right.
It's better than renting.
Well, at least I can make children. I mean, some people can't do that. I mean, that's got to be a positive, right?
That's true. And that's called Darwin. So, nature has its way.
He's successfully spread his genes around now. He is a considered a successful being on Earth. What's your excuse?
That's right. That's right. There's lots of little libertarians.
My excuse for being, I didn't ask to be. And by the way, you don't know how many of me there are knocking around because neither do I.
Yeah, a bunch of little cabbages fucking knocking around.
You never know.
At least my kids are going to be somewhat political. They'll probably rebel against me, though. I don't think all 6 will become libertarians. If I can get 3 out of 6, I'll consider that a success. What do you guys think?
Oregon Project 2030 will pretty much take care of any kind of worry about that anyways.
Project 2030. Oh, that was good.
All right, so MC John Brown. I consider him a terrorist and a traitor, and I am glad he was hung. Kill him again for all I care. Dig him up a few hundred times and kill him, just for the fun of it. What say you, sir? John Brown, hero or patriot? Or no, patriot or villain, I should say.
He was not a patriot by any stretch of the imagination. He was a hardcore abolitionist. He did. He went to Kansas with the idea that he was going to help it free slaves come what may. He went there with the attitude to fight. All right. Now, his time in Kansas he got the fights he was looking for, and he also got a conviction that the only way to fix all this was through bloody warfare. And so it was his intent to start the Civil War. For all intents and purposes, it was his intent to start the Civil War. You know,
So he wanted to free black
10 years
people
earlier.
by creating a conflict so that black
No.
people would die.
You know what I think is
And
hilarious?
and surely Kansas is the last place. I mean, it was hardly like a mainstay of slavery, wasn't it?
Well,
Most of it
No,
was
no,
South.
cabbage. Okay, cabbage. The reason Kansas is where it first took place is because they had made Kansas a free state to choose whether it wanted to be free or slave. And so the Southern politicians moved a lot of people up into Kansas and Missouri, and so did the Yankees. And so they had a standoff.
Migrants, you see, migrants.
They all flooded in there, and they didn't intend to stay. They intended to make it one way or the other and then leave. They were trying to impose their own.
That is true of some. There were people that were homesteading. The balance of power within the Senate was at stake. Now, of course, the violence that was going on, pretty much while that violence is taking place, there's no chance for statehood. So even if you're not winning the battles, the very fact that you're having violence, if your side is losing especially, pretty much keeps things as it was, so that it wouldn't become a state because it was considered a lawless zone. In addition to that,
Well, you mean because of the federal? Yeah, but that would have been federal imposition then.
well, no, I mean they have to petition. They have to petition to be a state, but I mean, if you're going to petition to be a state, then you got to have certain. You got to be able to prove certain things, like you could hold a vote, a real vote, without violence. If you can't hold a vote without violence, you're pretty much not much of a state at that point.
No, you're a banana republic.
So I mean, they're not. You wouldn't be allowed into the union. So whether you were going to ask to be be allowed to be in the union as a free or a slave state. Now, when a state petitions, or when a territory rather petitions to become a state, you got to remember it's got to be approved by both houses. And by this time, actually, the lower house, the House of Representatives, is pretty much dominated by the North.
Well, yeah, because they had a higher population density, and that was the whole point of the 4/5 or whatever.
That's how you got
counting
the
of
college,
the slaves.
Right?
No.
Well,
Okay.
Came out of that.
Well, it's 3/5.
The electoral
Population
college
density. Well, no, I'm saying population density was the issues.
Well,
yeah.
The electoral college has to do with total representation, because the founders never believed in direct democracy, because they said that a direct democracy is chaos.
Which I would agree. Democracy is nothing but three wolves voting on what's for dinner with only one lamb. Obviously, dinner is lamb.
It doesn't have to be, but it can be. Yeah.
It eventually devolves into that.
I agree with Benjamin Franklin on that all the way. And that analogy is just perfect. That's exactly what I see a direct democracy being. It's two.
Yes, but going back to the John Brown thing, I mean, how does that relate to the Kansas, issue, the way that it kind of skewed the process?
Well, John Brown was a preacher from the North. He was a hardcore anti-abolitionist. When the Kansas territories opened up,
he was pro-slave, was he?
No, he was pro-abolition. He was anti-slave.
Pro-abolition, right? So he wanted to go completely anti. I mean,
right,
well, he wanted to free all the slaves.
The thing is he didn't, in the area that he was in New York. It wasn't a very rich area as far as opportunity wise, and he wanted more opportunity. So he sent his sons into Kansas, because this is a territory that's opening up, to basically establish an area where they can have ranch land. Everyone's got this idea that they're going to go down there and get all this rich land and become rich farmers. And his sons, of course, are, as he is, very much anti slavery. His sons start talking about how they're having some troubles down there, and he goes down there to support his sons. And of course, at this point in time, what you have going on is people are asking their neighbors, "Are you pro-slave or are you anti-slave?" And you have to give an answer. Okay, you can't say I don't care. That's not good enough. Okay, so both sides are having roving gangs basically beating up or threatening people on the other side. All right, there had been threats leveled against.
Really, I've never heard about that because you see films like Mississippi Burning where you've got the Ku Klux Klan going out, and but were they equivalent black gangs going after white people?
This wasn't black gangs. This was John Brown, and
that's what MC was saying.
These are gangs.
He said there was an equivalent. So I mean, where was the equivalency?
The equivalent that I'm talking about is you're dealing with things along like the Hatfields and McCoys. You've got families.
They were white guy, yeah, but they were just two fuckers who just got pissed off because somebody stole a horse or something.
Well, regardless, what you have is they're divided along these lines, all right? And you have roving gangs. Like I said, you have roving gangs on both sides of the issue, not black and white. You have pro-slave and anti-slave forces clashing.
I'm not sure how about two white families arguing about, some horse wrestling that's got anything to do with slavery.
That's not what we're talking about here. Cabbage.
No, that's the point. That's why.
Well, no, Cabbage. Put this
equivalence. I was asking about an equivalence. I was saying about an equivalence.
Well, let me put this into a different light. They
had got the white gangs who were going out, like the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, if there was an equivalence, I mean, what was the opposite group?
Okay, first off, John Brown used machetes to chop up white settlers. We'll get to that in a minute. Second,
yeah, but John Brown was a white guy. I'm wondering about the.
But he was an abolitionist.
That we're talking about.
Well, no, and before and during the Civil War, this wasn't a white versus black thing. It was mainly a white on white confrontation.
Yeah, but he was exactly. So he's a self-hating whiter.
Maybe.
I'm just wondering why the black people, like the equivalence of the, was there an equivalence of the Ku Klux Klan?
But when you're talking about,
no, I'm just asking it seriously.
Well, you got to understand what you have going on here is you have basically two rival political gangs. All right, and the issue that they're rivaling on is slavery. And these are very impassioned pleas on both sides. They've really fueled this up. Okay, so what happens with John Brown is John Brown basically gets threatened, and it's a credible threat. Okay, that they're gonna burn out.
His son gets shot. His son gets shot eventually.
They're gonna burn out his family, and kill them all if they don't stop their abolitionist rabble rousing. Right, so John Brown says, "Okay, I'm going to get you guys first," and basically, in the middle of the night, he rides with his family members and a few others, like sympathizers. All right, in what the best way to describe it is a religious crusade, right, where he rounds up the people that he thinks are the people who are aligned against them, and then he takes them out back. He knocks on the door in the middle of the night, takes the men out. All right, from their wives, right? And their wives, when they find them later, find them hacked to pieces with a machete.
Well, yeah, and also...
And there's he was hacking up white people, right? That wasn't black people he was hacking up.
No, he was hacking up the white settlers from the South.
Yeah.
And what we have here in Kansas and Missouri...
In order to help the white... God, he was like the first social justice warrior.
Well, no, in Cabbage. Like I'm trying to say, when you look at Missouri and Kansas...
black people couldn't be bothered to do it. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, but you had
two separate... were slaves.
You had two separate governors. You had two separate governors in Kansas and Missouri, for that matter. At the same time, you had a slave-holding government and an anti-slave government, and the United States government didn't know who to put their power behind.
And that's what I'm saying is, why wasn't... Yeah, but, I mean, It's like, I mean, yeah, Brown might have done that, you know, if there'd been some black people supporting him, but him just going around, you know, arbitrarily hacking up white people that he
You
doesn't
gotta
agree with
remember
because
the
of,
federal
you know,
government.
that really does sound
You
like
you,
a fucking, you
you
know,
don't.
that sounds like the kind of thing that Big Red would do.
You got to understand, Cabbage. During this time frame, the U.S. military is about 5,000 people in total. Okay,
I'm not sure how that's relevant, but
because
Well, it's
you have
relevant
a
because they
huge
can.
ass territory. How are you going to be able to manage it with just 5,000 from a federal perspective? How are you going to manage it that way? The states at this point basically manage this kind of control on their own. It wasn't until John Brown basically goes, you know what? This just fighting back and forth in Kansas ain't going to cut it. What we need to do is we need to arm the black slaves, start a slave rebellion, and overturn slavery.
And that's where I want to go next. That's where
so
I
the
want to
white
go
man
with this.
had to bring about the change.
Well, no, and this is where I want to go with this. Let's
Lack of
fast.
commitment. That's all I'm saying.
Well, MC, let's fast forward. We're at Harper's Ferry. He wants to free the black people, but the first person he kills after he stops the train and he secures the train yard at Harper's Ferry is a freed black man. Explain to me how he is righteous. Explain to me how that Yankee is correct. I am with Robert E. Lee and Jeb Stuart, who were both there, and they quelled the rebellion and they hung him high.
Well, they didn't hang him.
They shot him, didn't they?
Yeah, hung
Sorry.
who?
No,
Sorry,
he got
who did
hung,
they
but
hang?
they didn't do it. I mean, he went to
Well,
trial. I
he
mean, it
did go
was
to trial. That's the way it
yes.
should be, but he got hung.
He went on trial. He made his little impassioned speech. They put a freaking rope around his neck and they dropped him down.
Good. And I'm in full support of that. And how am I wrong?
I never said you
About
were wrong.
what? I don't even know. Was the guy who was hung, was he black or white?
He
I'm
was
confused
John
at the
white.
moment.
John Brown is a white man. He committed terrorism.
Yeah, I know that, and he went around hacking up white people. But I mean, how the fuck? I mean, who was the guy who got hung on that tree that you're talking about?
Okay. I fast forwarded to Harper's Ferry. They took Harper's Ferry, they
Yeah,
controlled the train
Okay,
yard.
yeah, I heard that, but who got hung? That's what I'm
John Brown
asking.
did.
You said they hung
Yeah,
somebody.
John.
Okay, so Brown got hung there. Okay, I get
But
it.
because he when they storm Harper's Ferry, he's wounded and captured. His sons die. Many of the people with him basically die in the assault. All right, he's one of the ones that actually survives, although he's wounded, pretty grievously, but he survives his wound just enough so that they could try him and then hang him. Now, what happens at Harper's Ferry basically is, like I said, he determines he's going to start a slave rebellion. Well, if you're going to start a slave rebellion, you need to arm the blacks. Okay, you're not going to arm them with pitchforks and knives. You need to arm them with serious weaponry. Harper's Ferry is a federal arsenal. This has federal military equipment, to include some cannon, but it's basically a small arms armory. All right, so he comes up and concocts a plan with several freed slaves as well. All right, but mainly his sons and supporters of his revolutionary church. All right, to attack Harper's Ferry, which he does, and he seizes Harper's Ferry. Now, his idea was is to seize it and then get the hell out of there with the blacks. Seeing that he's going to hand out these weapons, they're going to come and help him. Well, what happens is the townspeople basically raise their militia faster than he can get out of there. Right, pin him in there until the federal forces under Robert E. Lee can assault Harper's Ferry and take it back.
Isn't it ironic that it was Robert E. Lee that did this? I just find the irony in history. You know what I mean, MC?
Well, the thing about that from an American perspective is it's not as surprising when you realize that the professional military corps is very, very small. There's a few numbers of people. It is interesting from when we look at it from from the perspective of the 2017 2018 time frame, right? But you got to remember the military West Point is only uh, putting out probably what 100 between 100 and 150 cadets a year, right, that are releasing into the
Yes, but also remember the population density of the area. It's not like there's a lot of people that you've got to contend with if you're going to go into a region. You know,
well, Harper's Ferry. That
everyone's
when
in
you say
small holdings.
I mean, it's not. I would agree that I would agree with you to say that obviously the population density is not like it is today, all right? But it's still a fairly. I mean, Harper's Ferry is still in a fairly populous area for the most part. I mean, you aren't dealing with
Well, it is now, but what about then? I mean, you know, relatively. It's all
well, even
relative
then,
terms,
relatively,
isn't it?
there were a few thousand people there. Like I said, they were able to.
Isn't a
They were
great deal.
able
That's not hard to suppress. A couple of thousand people. You only need maybe what, 50, 100, you know, trained troops. You can suppress.
Well, he couldn't
well,
even get that though. I mean, and the first person he killed was a freed black man, and they shot him in the back, I believe. I mean, it was pretty crazy. He's there for one reason, but he totally disregarded it at the very beginning by his own
Hang on.
foolish
So you're
actions.
saying that he was not only killing the white people, he was also killing the black slaves?
well, it's during the operation.
What the fuck
It's
is he up
during.
to? This guy seems to be a little bit confused about his message.
He was a bit messianic, but you also got to remember is that this is a military style operation.
It's a pretty fucked up one if that's military.
Well, I don't deny that.
He wasn't
But
looking for the common vote, was he?
the idea was that he was going to take
asking
these arms. He was going to take these arms, raid, then and go down through the plantations, freeing slaves and giving them firearms to fight.
Well, feed them or kill them. Apparently, he didn't give a shit whichever one he did.
No, it was not a matter of killing him. He didn't just walk up to a guy in the back of the head and shoot his ass.
Well, you don't know. It seems like the jury's out on that.
Well, no, the individual I am
pretty
speaking
arbitrary,
of,
didn't he?
well, no, to be honest, the individual I'm speaking of saw the takeover of Harper's Ferry at the railway, and he was trying to head back to tell either his master or some of the townspeople. And I hate to put it that way, but I mean, he was a freed black, so he didn't necessarily have a master, but I'm sure he worked for somebody, and he was headed somewhere.
He had a master.
No, he didn't. Okay, Virginia is the state of Virginia is in flux at this time. All right, it is beginning to industrialize. It still has a lot of the old plantation type of ideas of the South, but it's also probably the most industrialized of the southern states. It is getting more industry. It's where a lot of the railroad traffic is coming through. All right, so it's not nearly as rural, all right, as the other states are. In fact, the Virginia legislature, all right, had several times picked up and discussed the issue of slavery and whether or not they could free the slaves. The issue of allowing slaves to exist in Virginia remains so mainly because of Bacon's Rebellion, and it was still on the minds of the people was Bacon's Rebellion. They hadn't forgotten that, even though that had happened, 100 years previous. It was
What was
still
Bacon's Rebellion?
weird.
Can you explain that? I mean, what was the reason that they were so afraid?
Bacon's Rebellion.
I don't know what that rebellion was.
Okay, Bacon's Rebellion was Virginia is just a colony at this point, and Bacon is a slave who decides I've had enough. He kills his.
If you go Bacon, you're destined to be eaten.
Well, yeah, it's probably not the best name to be given. It probably puts a little added pressure because you think you're just going to be eaten like livestock. But Bacon basically has enough. He rebels against his
pig. Let me in.
He rebels against his master. He then starts a slave rebellion, which has to be put down by the Virginia militia. All right. During the time he was free, though, he went through several plantations, breaking in and just murdering the white plantation owners and their entire families.
That happened in Kenya recently.
Well, it was almost like it was almost like what happened in Haiti, and that was also fresh on the minds of Virginia at the time, right around Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry and the Civil War. The rebellion in Haiti had happened just a few years before, and they had literally slaughtered all the white people and declared themselves independent. Well, good for your independence. I'm okay with secession, but damn, you murdered
Well,
everybody.
hang on. Can I just clarify this? This is white people wiping out white people at this point. Is that correct?
You have the Civil War. During the Civil War, it was white people wiping out white people.
Okay. Do you get any thanks for that?
No, actually, it's funny that we're talking about this subject today because this is the first day of Black History Month. So I would like to also consider it Confederate History Month. It's going to be once a week on Mad Dodge's channel. We're going to talk about the Civil War. Fuck them all. I don't give a
Good
fuck.
man. Yeah, you should. Fair comment. Yeah, but I mean, you know, it's reasonable. No, I'm confused at the moment because I mean, I'm English, so clearly I don't have the same comprehension. I'm just getting kind of. This is why it's confusing me. Is that so far the only thing that seems to have happened is that white people have killed white people, and I don't know. I don't understand where the black people come into it yet. It's like watching one of those stories. You know, you see the story unfold, and it's like you're waiting for the star to appear, and it's not happening.
You have people who want to free the slaves, and you have people that think that slavery is the way the system God set up. And both of them are calling upon God.
Do the people who want to free the slaves have slaves to begin with?
No.
No. Okay. Right. So they're the Jedis.
Well.
And you got the Sith.
I wouldn't call them Jedis.
The Jedis and the Sith. Right. But the thing is,
any more than I would call the South.
They're protecting their black slaves.
You know, there is a lot of discussion. All right. About all of this, okay? And this is why Mad Dodge and I argue about this point all the time, because the Civil War, in my opinion, is fought over the issue of slavery. Now, he disagrees vociferously, I might add.
I do.
All right.
I do, and Adam Smith would also argue with you because he already said that it had written, you know, he'd written out his day, the time that they created the company store.
He can argue that all he wants. But if you take a look at the reality of why the northern forces fought, and you take a look at what happened during Reconstruction, you can't ignore what it was fought for.
Reconstruction is going to be a really good issue to debate you on, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, who built the Reconstruction? I'm guessing there was a lot of black people who were doing the Reconstruction.
I would love to dig into the carpetbaggers and the fact that all the whites in the South were disenfranchised and not allowed to vote. And when I say all, I mean 85%. I mean all of them. Anybody who picked up the gray, any of them were disenfranchised. So you tell me a population that knows how to read and write can be completely disenfranchised when a population that can't is now the governor and senator. Give me a
God, we've already
break.
had the social justice experience once. I didn't realize this. Okay, now I'm excited to hear the process. Right, so where did we leave off? Where was it? Because we got to find out how we got to that insanity, if that's the case. So we left it off at, where was it? The well, we were in Kansas, and you know the conflict there that then led into the South. This is going to be interesting. I'm getting a new insight into the American. This is quite interesting. This really is.
The American experience. No.
Yeah.
Well, no.
No, seriously, I'm intrigued. I'm really intrigued. I am. If it ends up with what you claim it does, and MC can't argue it, then I am totally fucking entranced with this process. So you start off with the Kansas thing, and where do you go from there, right? So what happened in Kansas? How did it get resolved?
It pretty much got resolved through the Kansas and Nebraska Act, right, MC? You want to elaborate on that a little bit? Oh, are you still here, MC?
MC. Oh, come on, this was just getting exciting. I was getting interested. It was like this is better than watching. You know.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. Back.
I didn't realize.
So,
I apologize. I've been trying to talk for a while. I didn't realize I wasn't.
I have no doubt. That's why we're surprised. Okay, so Kansas, where do we go from there?
All right, you can't talk about the Kansas and the Nebraska-Kansas Act without talking about the Missouri Compromise and the Dred Scott decision.
Oh, Dred Scott.
All right, what has happened is as these massive territories gain in population and then petition for statehood, okay, in order to keep the balance in the Senate, all right, what they've done is they've created what's called the Missouri Compromise. Now, I'm glossing over a lot about this because it's actually kind of interesting how the Missouri Compromise came about. But the Missouri Compromise basically said is if you're going to offer statehood for a northern state, then you have to offer statehood for a southern state or a state that allows slavery, so that the proportion of slaves to free remains the same. So the balance in the Senate is maintained.
Well, no, and that's why I think the Mason-Dixon line should have gone all the way west, and California should be split in half at this point. But go ahead and continue.
So
California should be floated off into the sea.
Now, the Missouri Compromise basically was exactly as Mad Dog says. They create what's known as the Mason-Dixon line. They basically extend it all the way through the territories, and they say anything south of the Mason-Dixon line will be, when it gets enough of a population, will come in as a slave state, and it'll partner with one above the Mason-Dixon line, which will be a northern state. Okay, the
Mason-Dixon line ever connect to Texas at all?
Yeah.
No. Well, it's Texas below the Mason-Dixon line.
That's what I was wondering, is if it ever managed to skew it.
So the Missouri is basically kind of partially above and below the Mason-Dixon line. So it's where the things break apart a little bit. All right. So what happens then is there's a slave.
But hang on, isn't that also the thing with Carolina? Isn't that the reason you got Northern and Southern Carolina and things like that?
No. Northern and Southern Carolina have nothing to do with that. In fact, Northern and Southern Carolina were both
Dakota,
part of the original 13 colonies. They were colonies.
Both. So why did they split?
It was just how the territory, how the territories were let by the King of England.
Oh, don't blame us. Shut up. Anyway, where were you?
It wasn't a complete. Both North Carolina and South Carolina are below the Mason-Dixon line, and both of them were slave states. I don't understand what your confusion is.
No, I was just wondering whether the splits were, to do with with those affiliations. That's what I was thinking.
Oh, no.
Affiliation.
Not in this case. And just like North Dakota and South Dakota, it's just a matter of this. They came out from the Dakota territories, and when it split into two states, this was the northern half, and that was the southern half.
Gotcha.
So during this time, a little bit afterwards, you have a slave named Dred Scott, and Dred Scott is taken by his master, and
I believe you'll find his real name was Boy.
Hey, Zero.
And voice has arrived.
And Zero voice.
Yes, I'm going to bring some real debate to this discussion on whatever it is.
Okay, and so Dred Scott is taken by his master into Ohio, across the border from, I believe, Kentucky.
Was he raped?
No. But when he goes to Ohio, because Ohio is a free state, he says, I don't have to go back. You can't force me back. I'm a free man. I'm no longer a slave. You've taken me from a slave state, and now I'm free. Okay.
Yeah, but he wasn't, was he?
Well, it goes. This case goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, and in a 7-2 decision, I believe it's 7-2. They determined that no. If you're considered property, then you remain property regardless of what a state is, because a state cannot determine the immigration status, or basically the citizenship status, of another state. Okay, so in this case, what they're saying
Well,
is
actually, what they're saying is that the corporation cannot be superseded by the state. The corporation has.
well, in this case, they said that the
supersedence.
state can't determine the immigration. The state of Ohio, for example, couldn't determine the immigration of somebody coming from.
No, what he was saying was that ownership trumps it all.
Right.
Right.
Well,
So
they
you
did.
own
They
something,
did
and
establish that ownership had currency in this case. All right.
I have a question, MC, since you're the historical buff. Why wasn't he shot on sight as soon as he started to give a bit of lip?
Well, no, he was captured.
Well, got a bit mousy.
Well, no,
Little
you're trying to be funny.
The worst thing you want is an uppity nigger, like.
Okay, well, you're trying to be funny, voice, but the fact is, he was caught under the Fugitive Slave Act. He was caught under the Fugitive Slave Act.
Not quite.
Not quite. Where am I wrong there?
Well, because, like, you got to understand this is Dred Scott. This is a specific situation, right? In fact, his master frees him. Okay, so I mean, that on a personal level, that's one of the strangest things about this case. But the Supreme Court decision went much further in that. What they said is that you could create the Fugitive Slave Act, of where they could go into the Northern Territories, captured runaway slaves, and forcibly bring them back down south. Now, what happens as a result of this is many of the slaves that had run away, that were living lives in the Northern Territories, actually then tried a migratory movement up into Canada.
Oh, was that when they had the tunnels and stuff? Like they
That's
got
when
in.
you have what's called the Underground Railroad.
Yeah.
So you have a more codified version of the Underground Railroad gets established. But the other aspect of that was the Supreme Court basically disenfranchises even freed black citizens, saying because the Congress of the United States has not determined their status, they are therefore not citizens.
That's where they messed up. And I believe the Dred Scott decision was a catastrophe. From a libertarian level, a person cannot be property. But the fact that the Constitution dictated that, I will argue what the Constitution said at the time when it comes into a Civil War debate.
Yeah,
because
that's what we have
to
go time, right?
Now this creates you got to also delve into something else, because this is coming on the heels of the Amistad decision. Okay.
Which was?
Okay. All right. The Amistad was a ship owned by the Spanish.
Oh, that's that movie with your.
the Spanish-American War. Yes.
No. Spanish-American War is much
later. Wasn't the Amistad in the Spanish?
No, it was a slave ship, wasn't it? I think I saw a movie about that.
I know
it
the name.
is. They did do a movie on it, all right? But this is an important decision, because the Supreme Court in that decision, it was a 7-2 decision as well, stated that if you were free, okay, you could, and it made a slave, if you became free again, then you were free, because you were not initially property. It didn't change the status of the people that were already property, but if you ever became free when you...
But how could you prove you were free? If you didn't have shackles on you, then you were free. Right? I mean, what would define you as free? Basically, they said
that you couldn't... What they defined as free is that if you were in your own home country and you were captured by slave traders, you were initially free.
Say that again.
Okay. If you were captured by slave traders, you were considered initially a free man.
But how many people were actually captured? I believe that the way the slave trade is they were already captured by the tribes in Africa or the city-states, whatever you want to define them as, and then sold to mainly
Right,
by
but if you were born,
traders.
the
They
rule
were
was
Portuguese or Spanish usually.
the rule was if you were
Portuguese and Spanish were the major slave trade.
if you were born free,
The Dutch.
okay, then then got your freedom back, you were considered a freeman. So you have two rulings by the Supreme Court, one after another, about 20 years between them, a little over 20 years between them. All right, basically arguing kind of two separate things and basically dancing on the head of a pin. Now the Dred
Well,
Scott
that's the
decision,
thing I was meaning, MC, because how can you prove that you are
So-
technically anything? Because you
well,
know, you don't.
and
It's not like
that
you
becomes,
get a
becomes
ring or something to
problematic
prove you're.
because in the United States, you got to remember, in the United States, there has been no importation of slaves since the 1830s.
Well, not officially, but you know
Well,
what
I think
people
there's
don't
some Asian
Yeah,
you
women.
don't know. You don't need to talk about. Hey, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, and not as good as a wink to a blind bat.
Well, yeah, I would like to argue that the Yankees were shipping slaves in all through the Prohibition on it, and I have proof for that. I might
You
add.
don't have proof that
Yeah,
all
because his granddad bought one.
people that were
He's got the
violating,
Hey,
were there
great,
people
great.
that violated? Were there people that violated the laws? Of course. I mean, laws get violated all the time. But it was illegal to import slaves after 1830 by the Constitution of the United States.
But it was all right to import servants.
No,
No, indentured servitude also was ended. I'll be fair there.
no, you could not bring in. It was not legal for you to bring in any slaves whatsoever.
Then who makes my bed in the morning?
Well, you do, you lazy bastard.
If I was a millionaire, I'd never do anything for myself.
Rumpelstiltskin, mate. Have you not noticed the gold underneath the bed as well?
So
And the chocolate, you got a chocolate on
you
the
end
pillow.
up in a situation where the Supreme Court basically disenfranchises all blacks because they came back and said that all blacks in the United States, due to the fact that generations have passed, they were born initially into slavery. Therefore, Congress has to determine what their status is. And since Congress has not determined what their status is, they can't be considered freemen.
So, is that,
so the default status was slave.
well, no,
Right.
and
For
isn't that
blacks,
the thing?
yes.
No, I just see an argument for the left here. Is that not the default status of an illegal immigrant? Is illegal immigrant? You can't, necessarily get up from that unless you have an act from Congress.
Show me
So,
your papers.
So, I mean, is there not a modern day parallel here?
No, because
How
remember,
could you-
the
these are
slaves,
people that were born
no,
into slavery, and some of them
Yes,
were born freemen, and you just disenfranchised them in the territories. They haven't moved even a mile from where they were born, and you're going to say, but illegal aliens that came across the border, that's similar? No, Mad Dodge, it's not.
no,
I
it's like
was
this.
reaching. It was worth the shot, though.
NC,
Come on.
No, it's like this. The Maxims are coming here out of personal choice. I don't think the slaves were. Unless
Okay,
Very
you
few
know
of the
what?
slaves.
No, you
Very
know
few of the
what?
slaves.
No, I have had enough of this. Yeah, it wasn't your personal fucking choice. But you know what? Instead of fucking putting down the South and saying the South is fucking evil, how about you say thank you? How about you say, hey, I like being an American.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm glad I'm fucking here.
American.
God damn it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, did anyone do any?
Have you ever said thank you to the Native Americans?
I have. My wife's part Native American. And I tell her thank you every time after we get done.
People, how many people got checked and said, well, are you happy to just the way it is? I mean, there's no comparable study.
Yes, I could just see that happening.
There could
Some
have been.
fucking, back in the 18 whatevers, some fucking
Yeah.
idiot going out into the slave pens. Hello, I'm here to take a wee survey. Have you time, sir?
That's it. That's it. You see, you don't have that. But there could have been loads of people who were in Africa who said, this really fucking sucks. I don't give a shit. It's got to be better than this, and jumped on a ship anyway. You know. So there was,
I don't
Has
think
anyone done the studies?
I don't think that's what happened, dude. There's not much. There's not any evidence of that happening.
Well, I'm just saying, it's a distinct possibility.
Oh, Puana, please save me! No, they weren't running around going, "Oh, Puana, please save me."
It's
Well,
as
I
bad
feel-
as saying the
Yeah.
slaves only came
Throw
here
me on a
because
freaking ship crammed with thousands of others,
Yeah.
where I can't.
You know why?
Because
Because these
point A to point B.
purple-haired fuckers like you have written it out of history.
That's
Well,
right, you Ken Burns motherfucker. Like, fuck you, Ken Burns.
Yes, and you have to also take into consideration, the slaves who were really into S&M, and that's why they
Have
went
you guys
over.
even taken a look at what a slave ship was like?
Well, it looks kind of like a Viking ship, but worse. I mean, it's all right.
It doesn't look like a fucking Viking ship.
Well, it does. I mean, they're paddling and shit.
I'm sorry, but Viking ships
Well,
and American
I'm
ships
just
were completely
saying,
different.
I'm just thinking it's something that should be at least explored. That's all I'm saying.
Well, they had a first class. I'm pretty sure none of the guests got to see it.
They did. They had first class, business class, and storage.
You want to guess where your ancestors were, Cabbage?
Yeah, but they were in Roman slave ships.
Yeah, in actual fact, you know how many of the sailors died doing these fucking journeys? And they were white men too.
Yeah, let's make it all about the white
See,
people.
and you know
Oh,
why?
poor
Because the
people.
black people didn't even have the skills to sail a boat, you see?
Oh, wow.
Ill-educated.
That's a good sound bite right there,
They
Cabbage.
couldn't even get themselves over to somewhere more sensible.
And plus, it wouldn't even matter
We
if
had
they
to
couldn't
do it
sail
for
it
them.
because they didn't know the way home.
They didn't know the way. They had no idea what the way. And they didn't care about the way because they were happy with what they did have.
Oh, God. Did I tell you guys my son has been asking me, like, for the last 3 days if I know the way? I'm like, yes, I know the way to the queen. He's like, you know the way to the queen? God damn it, son. He's 12, by the way. Like, God damn it.
Come down, turn around, pick a bale of the cotton.
This is the shit I'm going to have to deal with for, like, the rest of my life. Like, God damn it.
Oh, dear.
Okay.
So, anyway, okay, lazy slaves, they can't be bothered to go and find their own way to a new job.
All right, hold on a second.
So they need a taxi, right? So we got lazy black people who need a taxi over to the new world. And
This
they're not
is
even willing to pay for it.
This is the taxi that you're talking about.
Well, no, I will present that to everybody. Just give me a second.
Yeah, I was just about to
All
ask you to.
Yeah, let's look at this. Okay, that looks like a Viking ship. I told you. You know, they're
That's
rowing.
nothing like
Yeah.
a Viking
Oh,
ship.
those people are laying down head to toe.
With
Oh, exactly,
oars.
lay down. Fucking lazy
some-
bastards. They're not even standing up. They're not contributing to anything. They're doing nothing.
God damn
They're
it.
getting a freebie. They're just fucking sunbathing. Christ's sake.
Yeah,
They don't even need
man.
a tan.
Yeah, it sounds so hard. It sounds so hard. Just lay there on a cruise
They
across
don't
the
even need a
ocean.
tan
Sounds
and they're
fucking
fucking
great.
sunbathing. What is wrong with these people? Get
I
up.
want to go on
Do
a
some
cruise.
work, you lazy
Hook me
bastard.
up. Hook me up. Sign me up for this cruise, MC.
It's going to take you. It's going to
There
take
are
you.
sales that need attending to. Look at all the white people running about. Huh?
Yes, where's it? No, hang on. I actually want to ask a serious question. Is this a complete schematic? Because there should actually be your what do you call them? the mainsails and stuff. You know, why is it not
Yeah.
this one?
No, this is just where they're showing the quarters where the slaves
Right,
were
right,
held
right.
and how
Quarter deck.
they were held.
Mm.
Obviously,
See?
if you take a look at where they got the O's and everything,
Sleeping.
those areas are basically the where the food storage and so forth is. And as these people are being transported across, if they refuse to eat, they would have their teeth bashed in and they would be force-fed food.
Well, don't refuse to eat. That's what you told me when we were talking about the prisons. I was like, just let them starve. You're like, we can't do that. Well, there you go. MC.
But the reason they were force-feeding them is that even a slave without any teeth could still be sold.
I'm sure it wasn't for like pate de foie gras. Maybe it was a particular like group of people.
Damn it. You're not going to get me to argue in favor of slavery. That's not going to happen. But you already arguing in favor of force feeding, and they didn't have feeding tubes back then. How else are you going to do it, MC?
They had funnels.
You basically I'm just talking about how bad these conditions were. Now, as you can see, where are you going to piss? Where are you going to shit? This is a 3-week frickin' cruise.
Well, they don't care. Look at them laying about, lazy bastards. Anyway, look, you got the whole ocean to shit in if you want to.
Yeah, didn't it just,
well,
you know,
that's what I was going to
the
say.
edge?
Just you shit over the edge, yeah.
Yeah,
Just like
whole
the white
ocean to
guys.
shit in.
And when slavery became outlawed, specifically by the British, and where they would do this, if they saw a British sail coming at them, they would then take all these people in their chains and throw them overboard so they didn't get
They
caught
would.
with slaves.
And you know why? Because the British didn't believe in slavery. But apparently it now thinks that they used to be a slave, even though it never happened to them.
They believed in
Fucking
slavery
morons.
until after the American Revolution. They had no problem with it prior to that.
Wait a minute. They threw
No, you must be
all-
joking. No, we were paying the people in the Middle East and all kinds of African countries not to, you know, like we were paying the warlords not to provide the slaves. We tried to cut it off at source. We were paying
after the American
third of our
Revolution.
entire GDP at one point
Okay,
to avoid, you know, people even having the ability to buy slaves.
I want to.
After the American Revolution.
I want to get back to.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's before or after.
I want to get back.
It's still, you know, it's still a fucking good thing to do, right?
Well, no, you're right.
I don't know. It's not done any good. Nobody's ever fucking thanked us for it. So fuck 'em.
Well,
Jesus, what a waste of money that was.
Anyway, I want to get back to. They threw them over the side, MC.
Yes.
Mhm.
That's merchandise that they're just throwing over the side.
That's right. It was.
But it's contraband that they could go to get hung for.
Hey,
Yeah.
dude, if I get pulled over with 4 ounces,
Yeah, but don't forget, that was only the
I'm
British
not throwing
flag.
the weed out the window, dog. I'm just gonna hope I fucking make it through the stop.
Really?
It was only
And
the British flag. If it was
the
Portuguese or
no,
French, they didn't
No,
give a shit.
really, no, really. And
Well-
9 times out of 10, I will make it through the stop. I'll talk my way out of it.
Suppose that if they stopped you, they didn't, and they found that 4 ounces of weed, they took you to the nearest tree and strung you up.
Well,
No,
then I
it's
might
hard
throw it.
to, it's hard to hide you know, like 100 Negroes is not an easy stash to hide.
They weren't
Well-
issuing a ticket going, how many did you have? Here's your
You know, the thing is, I just don't know why they just didn't, you know, when they saw the British ship, just
I don't understand why they didn't just
No,
take on
no,
board
just-
some whitewash. Just whitewash them. and then they
just
wouldn't
hang
go
the
caught.
slaves over the side and call them decorations.
Well, no, just have them moving about the deck and being like, "Hey, that's my crew." And if they say something, you
Whitewash
fucking kill their children. Like,
What do you mean
No,
you killed their children? They don't even know where their children are at this point. 'Cause you
Well,
purchased them on a
Well, that's one reason why they should be fucking happy then, isn't it? No more child maintenance. Yeah.
God
guys are impossible.
damn. Yeah, we're horrible people. Like,
Fuck. I mean, if fucking someone took Matt away from 6 kids and put him in a boat, he'd be fucking dancing a jig.
yeah, I'm about to run to fucking California with 40 ounce. I'm done. Like, I'm out of here. Okay.
God, you guys are credible.
Okay.
Now, come on.
My wife's
We're not
sitting
that
right
bad,
here
actually.
next to me. I'm definitely not going to California. 40, if you hear this. Make sure the trunk is big.
So anyway, you ended up basically slave trading is basically banned in the United States. Now, when I say slave trading, I'm not talking about internal slaves. I'm talking about importation of slaves.
Well, that's what criminal gangs do now anyway. Only it's usually Asian sweatshops.
So
actually, the UN does that quite successfully.
Because of the but back to the storyline now. Because the Missouri Compromise is declared null and void. All right, where you can't tell a state above the Mason-Dixon line to be free or slave. It becomes an opportunity for both sides then to create self-determination in the territories that are becoming populous enough to become states. So it turns into, like Mad Dodge said earlier on, where settlers would flood into Kansas, all right, from both sides, both free and slave areas. And there were areas that were considered free and areas that were considered slave within the territories. And these people would then basically, with religious fervor on both sides, fight and skirmish with one another. And these, of course, turn into feuds because these are, you killed my brother, well, now I'm going to kill you or your brother, right? So you end up with basically added to all this family
blood feuds. Yeah, blood feuds. That's what they used to call them, wasn't it? Blood feud.
Yes, and so you end up with the term bleeding Kansas, and this is why.
Oh, is that where it comes? Okay, got it.
This is what you wanted to talk about, right, Mad Dodge? You wanted to go here?
This is where it came from. I never understood where the term came from, but now I do. All right, got it. So it's blood feuds. Okay.
Well, no,
is that actually what it is, or is that just what MC's turned it into?
No, that's what they call it. That's what they call it, bleeding Kansas, because of the violence and the bloodshed and the blood feuds. Yeah.
Well, then, if they call Kansas bleeding Kansas because of all the fighting and blood spilled, why don't they call New York a landing strip?
Well, we're not as creative nowadays.
You what?
We're not as creative nowadays. We had way more creativity back in the day.
Yeah,
another thing I don't understand, were the families, one family was slave owners and the other wasn't. Is that what you're saying, MC?
In some cases, that was true as well.
Right. Yeah, but it came down to a political situation where they elected two separate governments in the state. I mean, it really was bizarre.
Guys, it's basically just like it's a statewide or nationwide version of Romeo and Juliet, apparently.
You have to wait.
Well, no, MC, you know what I'm talking about with the two separate elected governments of the state. It was really bizarre what happened in was that Missouri? No, it was Kansas, I believe.
No, it was Kansas. And you end up in a situation where both sides are saying, because when the election took place, there was a lot of violence. Both sides claimed that the other ones were not valid. The other side wasn't valid in their voting. Okay, so therefore they both declared victory. They both installed their own governments, and of course, all this did was cause even more violence back and forth.
And where was the larger? I don't think it was called this at the time, but the federal government at that time.
This is in an area that the federal government doesn't have any kind of certainty over in any real regard.
So this is a time when it was still just half of America was governed in what you would call the United States way today, and then the other half wasn't.
Well, no, because none of the states were governed that way. The way the government were working prior to the Civil War and the way the federal government works after the Civil War are diametrically opposed.
So this was before the Civil War. Then this is the lead up to the Civil War.
This is to the lead. Yeah. This is part of the lead up to that happened.
Right. Get you now.
Well, no, and the fact that you said that they are fundamentally different is where I come into conflict with you, MC, because I believe the federal government before the Civil War was the proper government. And what we have now is an abomination. It's the EU, man.
Maybe the southern states should have thought about that prior to firing on the federal forts.
Actually, you know something.
Hey, MC, no, MC, we will get to Fort Sumter. Remember, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this in order. You're the one that told me we should do that.
I have an idea. I think
hold Fort Sumter for later.
I think these Kansas people actually had the right idea. If you state and it's split down the middle, why not let them fight to the death for the state?
Well, what was happening is there were settlers coming in from both the north and the south. Both sides were sending settlers into these areas, and they were exacerbating the situation. A lot of the initial settlers were fairly peaceful and just wanted to farm, and they were being burned out by one side or the other, depending upon how they answered questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a big issue, is the fact that there was an influx from the north and the south, abolitionist and pro-slavery factions that flooded into Kansas and Missouri that made this situation way worse than it ever had to be. It never had to be like this. And really, let's be honest, Kansas is pretty close to the Mason-Dixon line. It would have been a slave state if left alone. Can you agree with that, MC? It would have been a part of the Confederacy if this had played out.
It would have been close, all right? But either way, it would not have been allowed into the Union without Nebraska being allowed in. Either way, and this is the thing that the truly sad part is, regardless of whether or not Kansas voted to petition as a slave state or if it petitioned as a free state, it was not going to come in without a corresponding vote from the other side. It wasn't.
Absolutely. But if you look at Missouri and you look at the Civil War itself, a lot of the rebel, I don't know, home guard or guerrilla troops, whatever you want to call them, came from Missouri and Kansas. I mean, the fact there was a Confederacy.
That has more to do with the fact that they had ready horses there that had those kind of statements.
I have another serious question before I go back to shitposting. But
no, you don't. You lie.
No. Since there was the two sides, was there ever a third side in the Civil War? Was there ever a side that said, right, I want nothing to do with either of these fuckers, we're going to start our own thing? Was there ever a third side in it? Even if
you mean the War of Independence? That
even if it was tiny, who didn't want anything to do with either side.
On voice, I would argue there was a third side, and it was the abolitionists that believed in freeing the slaves, but they also believed that the way Lincoln was conducting the war was wrong. And they did issue statements, they did write pamphlets, they did put out newspapers.
Yes, but when you say abolitionists, were they the people who wanted to basically deport all the blacks back and pay for it, and show them the way?
No, actually, these are the people that wanted to just free them and leave them there, unlike Lincoln and his ilk, who wanted to deport them.
Mm-hmm. Lincoln did not want to deport them. He thought that was.
Yes, he did.
No, he did not.
Yes, he did. He had his own colony fucking thought up.
He did not. The Liberian colony was completely a voluntary situation, and he hoped they would go, but he wasn't going to use federal forces to march them on boats and send them over there.
No, you mean he was too cheap to pay for them to get a ship home?
No, but that's why, Sherman totally fed the slaves that followed his army. He was very generous, right? Wait a minute. News break. No, he fucking wasn't. He didn't give a shit about them. He let them starve on the side of the road.
They were impeding his movement during a war situation.
Fuck him and
But
his
just
Hang
like,
on, he was
and
in.
what
fuck
did
him,
tell me? What
fuck
did the
him.
Southern
Hang
forces
on, you're
do
saying
with
that
that
black. Hang
trail of
on, black
refugees?
people were impeding his way.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
People were
That's
impeding
right.
the
No,
way.
they're there to free the slaves, but the slaves are impeding the way, so let them.
I don't get that.
Yeah.
I really don't get that argument.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
doesn't make sense.
The reality is that when you're fighting a war,
Are you saying they're lazy people?
no,
Is that what it is?
I'm not saying that they're lazy people. What do you do with
They-
refugees?
Kill them.
Yeah, well, you deport them. Well, you went to the you went too far there, but
How
No,
did I go
but-
too far? Listen, you don't let them
No,
into your
please
country.
give them a boat home.
If your argument is they fought to free the goddamn slaves, why are they leaving them on the side of the fucking road when the
Just because
Confederacy?
you're fighting to
No,
free
wait
them.
a
You're
minute.
freeing them from
Wait a
the
minute.
bondage of
Wait a
slavery.
minute.
You're not
Wait
sitting
a
up there
minute.
trying to hold on
Wait
a
a
second.
minute.
You're not trying. You're not
Hang
trying
on,
to say,
free from bondage.
"Oh, look,
Yes,
we're
it's not
giving
free
you
from
land or
bondage.
anything."
Yes, it is.
No,
No, you
no,
see,
MC.
back there.
No, MC.
Free
You're
from
trying to
bondage.
free a people. You're trying to free a people when the Confederacy, which had zero food, they couldn't even feed their own troops, much less the prisoners they held from the North after Lincoln stopped swapping prisoners. But they would still try and feed these slaves. But the North couldn't do that. They couldn't be fucking bothered.
What do you mean?
I can tell you why.
Right?
It has
I can
nothing
tell
Leave
you
them on
why
the
it
side
has
of
not.
the road.
nothing-
Let them
it has
fly. We
nothing
don't
to-
care.
It has
No, I can
nothing to
tell
do
you
with
why
it.
not.
You have the idea that somehow a military force, all right, is a frickin' Meals on Wheels program.
Well, maybe if you're trying to free a people, you shouldn't let them starve on the side of the fucking road,
Like I
bro.
said, are you claiming that these people are lazy because they
No,
wouldn't,
not,
they
I'm
wouldn't
not claiming
fight for
that.
their,
No one's
they wouldn't
claiming that
fight
they're
for their
lazy.
breakfast?
Stop trying to put words in the mouths.
I'm not. I'm asking.
People are frickin' trying to run away from their masters. They're flooding into these areas. And hold on a second. And they're jamming the roads when you're trying to conduct a military operation. You do not have time, all right, to stop in the middle of a military operation and do a frickin' Meals on Wheels program.
Oh no,
Well,
you're
I'm sorry,
right.
but that's
No,
just
no,
very
no,
poor-
MC,
poor
you're
attitude.
right. You're right. You don't have time for that. But you know what you do have time for? Burning down their masters' houses and the slave quarters, stealing the food, burning the crops.
All right,
You
that
have
was-
time
that
for
was
all
the-
of that.
that was
You
the
have
march
lots
to
of
the
time for
sea.
that. God damn it!
Mod, no, Mod.
There
that's-
was. Hold
no,
on a
Mod,
second,
that's
and I've got an answer
military
for you
tactic.
there.
Yeah,
That's
you can
military.
you can create the Sherman collars, can't you? But you got enough energy
that was
to do
Sherman's
that, but you
march
can't
to the
cook a
sea.
fucking.
Hold on, shut up, cabbage.
Yeah.
This is Sherman's march to the sea after the capture of Atlanta. All right, and to be honest, it wasn't that wide a swath to begin with, and it was for one purpose
100
and one
miles
purpose
wide?
only.
Not that wide at all. 100
It-
miles all the way to the sea.
It wasn't 100 miles
not
wide.
that big.
It wasn't 100 miles wide.
Okay, fair enough. You can get me on the mileage.
No,
I'm sorry.
I
Go
know
ahead.
how to the answer now. No, that was a military tactic. You
Yes.
go in, you take the feed. you
Fuck
take the
you,
food.
voice.
No,
Fuck
And
no,
it
you
was
go
a
in, you
military
take-
tactic necessitated by the Southern military strategy
Mod,
when they
you go
freaking
in-
lost
Of
the
what?
fact that they
Defending
had no
themselves?
freaking
Hang on,
military
no, hang on,
force
hang
to
on.
stand.
Yeah,
Mod,
defending
you go in.
ourselves?
No, Mod,
God
hang
damn
on,
it.
hang on a minute. You go in, you take your enemy's food, and you salt the ground so they can't grow more for their troops. It's a simple military tactic that has been used throughout history.
Oh, I'm sure it's very simple. And you know what it's used for? Killing civilian populations. That's not okay. That violates the rules of war set forth
No,
in
it's
modern day
defeating your
Geneva
enemy.
Convention.
Well,
And it's also violates the rules of
I
war
hate
set
to tell you
forth
this,
by the
Mad Dog,
church
but
in the Middle
scorched
Ages.
earth is not banned by the Geneva Convention.
Well, it fucking should be.
And anyway, I can bet you this.
And there
not
wasn't a
one of the
Geneva
people who
Convention
fought
back
that
in
war
the
back then
1860s
could even
anyway.
point to where Geneva was in a map. So yeah,
Well, I
it wasn't
wasn't
really an
talking
issue
about
back then.
I wasn't talking about the Geneva Convention back then. I was talking about the rules set forth by the Catholic Church when it came to rules of war in medieval Europe. And even then, they said you shouldn't attack
I
civilian
tell you
populations.
right now,
Mod,
this wasn't Europe.
Hang on,
Well, I
Mod,
still
you're
want to
bring
go
up
back to
fucking-
these lazy
No, hang on,
people on
Cabbage,
the
Cabbage,
boats
no, hang
who
on.
were getting stone pans.
Mod, you're bringing up the religious, and yet you're saying it wasn't in their wheelhouse. Have you heard of the Crusades by any chance? It was very much in their fucking wheelhouse.
Okay, they. Never mind. We're not going to Calais.
Yes. Well, that's inconvenient truth.
That's what walking into a wall feels like, Mod.
Yeah. Fuck you, buddy.
Anyway, I still want to know about these lazy fuckers who get free cruise. I still want more insight into that.
I just can't believe that.
I just want to say, fuck Sheridan and fuck Sherman. MC, you're cool, dude. You're my friend, but fuck you too, buddy. Like, god damn it.
You know, you're
And
burying
MC is
hatred.
federal through and through. You know,
You're burying
he's
hatred.
federal.
You're burying hatred toward a situation that you've never seen, were never a part of.
Maybe Lincoln.
No, you. So don't fucking pretend that you're anything special, because you weren't there either.
I didn't say I was.
I
I'm
just
not the
No,
one-
yeah, but you're
I'm
making
not the
assertions
one-
about him.
I'm not the one sitting screaming or bitching about people just because, quote unquote, they conquered the South.
I know
Quote,
why
unquote,
you're
they
on,
murdered civilians.
hang on.
And yeah,
Once again,
Okay.
your term of civilian and what was really going on during that time frame don't necessarily equate.
Oh no, come on! There was that example where they put all the people in a church and fucking burned it. That was pretty fucking disgraceful. That was and
Yeah, but
that
let's
was
be
a lot
honest.
of white. That had nothing to do with
hang
black
on, hang
people.
on, no, hang on. Let's be honest, they were all witches. So you don't need to worry about it.
Mm,
yeah.
What are you
We
talking
should have
about,
crucified
you're
them.
right. Yeah, along the Appian Way.
I know why Lincoln was the way he was because he read Ayn Rand.
Oh god damn it. Well, you know, actually, Hitler said he admired Lincoln. Just throwing that out there.
Hitler admired Gandhi too.
Yeah, and he was
Well,
a fucking
Gandhi
racist.
was a piece of shit too. Yeah.
He was a friggin' racist. But then again, so's what's her name? The Indian witch.
Well, you know what they say: birds of a feather flock together. So you know, just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
You know, you try to hold these people to a standard that that didn't exist because it couldn't exist.
Oh no, but is it, no, hang on, no. Are we doing that now all the time?
Mad Dodge is trying to morally judge people that lived in a time frame that he can't comprehend. He's not even bothering to try.
Wait a minute.
What?
I have just argued in favor of people being property for 45 minutes. I'm not trying to argue their perspective.
Hang on, you
Give me
promoted
a
that. I
fucking
don't believe it.
break.
Did you do that? Okay.
Your comment about
I'm not related. If he's promoting
your
ownership,
comment, fuck
I'm
Sheridan,
not
fuck
agreeing with that.
Sherman, fuck Lincoln. Yeah.
No, I didn't argue that it was right. I argued that that was a perspective from the people at the time. And I can still say the perspective of the people at the time was fuck Lincoln.
That was
Okay.
not. I'm not talking about the perspective of the people at the time. I'm talking about your perspective, Mad Dodge.
Well, Lincoln said he would never have released a slave if he didn't have to, right? So I mean,
He
it's
said, if I
nothing
could
anyone
save
could
the
gauge
Union.
for. Yeah, exactly.
And he
That's
never
what he
did.
So he's
And he
got
never
nothing
did.
That has not. That right there, it shows you that you're taking a look at and you're inflating things because he's putting a different priority on things. His priority.
The point is, oh no, yeah, he's putting his priorities.
The
His
point isn't
principles
whether
are
or
pretty
not he thought
obvious.
slavery was wrong or not. He thought saving the Union had a higher priority. That's not the
Exactly.
same thing
MC.
as saying
MC.
That's right. It is.
He didn't want to free any slaves.
MC. No.
Mm.
You want to talk to me about historical perspective. Have you listened to the Lincoln and Douglas debates? Give me a fucking quiz on historical fucking relevance then. Because Lincoln didn't give a fuck about the black man. And you can ask any of these black people around right now. Ask fucking Black Hitler. He'll tell you Hitler or fucking Lincoln didn't give a fuck. He'll tell you that straight up.
I
And
know
still-
what he'll say because he's only looking at it from his own narrow little perspective, and he's cherry picking who the man was.
See, and that's the point I was making earlier on. Is right.
the
How
man
many of those
said who he
people were
was.
jumping on those boats and saying, "Get me the fuck
None
out of
of
here"?
them.
It's got to be better, right? Got to be a lot of them.
No.
You know, they hear about the fact of a new world and new opportunities.
I'm
There's gotta be
sorry,
a lot of
Cabbage.
people
There was
failing.
not a wave of people saying, "Put me on a
There
slave
was.
ship." All
There
right?
were.
Come on. No, they were not.
There were. They had fuck all else at home.
You're insane.
Yeah, look,
That's
you
like
can't
Holocaust
prove me
denial
wrong.
shit. Jesus. That's Richard Spencer crap right there.
Roots was actually just it was a love boat.
Dying here.
Wait, did you say Roots was the love boat? God
That's what he
damn
said.
it.
Yes.
They did.
Oh, wow, dude.
Oh God.
For you 4 people that are watching this right now, you are in for a treat.
Well, fuck if this stream doesn't get your tone taken down, I don't know what will.
Well, the South will rise again, and slave ships were the love boat. There you go.
That's the title for the stream.
Love Boat Slave Edition.
Well,
I'm telling you, people just don't understand. You see, it's a revisionist bullshit, and they keep telling you it was all bad. But I assure you.
And of course, according to Cabbage, the Jews walked into Auschwitz thinking it was a holiday hotel.
Absolutely,
yeah,
and they were given a free pina colada with every ticket.
Well, no, and the oven was just a sauna, right, Cabbage?
That's right. They're just not very. They're not comfortable with heat. Actually, no, it doesn't make any sense because they all retired to Florida. Actually, so that's
were dug up from were Native Americans from the Aztec pyramids as well, right? They weren't really Jews that they were laying in those mass graves as they were getting cooked, right?
Where?
It was part of the barbecue that they were having for the Jews.
yeah. But who said that they weren't willing to? Maybe they'd had enough. They might have volunteered.
Yeah, we hit this world to take us. I think they were all ginger Jews. That's why they burned so quickly.
Their souls had to return to hell sooner.
You started this, man.
Sorry, they're soulless. There are no souls. That's why they burnt quicker. They had no souls.
Yeah, the downward spiral, MC. It happens.
That's why you should never have me on a stream, lads. Seriously.
Oh no, it was going that way with Cabbage. He was determined to take it that way.
No, Auschwitz was Butlins, right? That's a fact. So,
I don't think they're American. Do you know what Butlins is over there?
No, they don't, but other people will, and so somebody else can get a chuckle, you see, without them realizing why. I'm just trying to give something out for everyone.
It's like
anyway,
it's like
back to North America, and
Butlins is like the B-movie version of Disneyland. If that makes any sense to you.
So it's like Six Flags.
Here's the Flume ride. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think they had a water slide, but maybe a lava slide. That might have worked.
Oh God damn it.
The Auschwitz lava slide.
I think there was an awful lot of
orgies
going on.
Here's where we do arts and crafts. Notice how we make lampshades.
No, I think there was an awful lot of orgies going on because for some reason the Jews kept taking off.
I got my skinning the Jew patch.
What is wrong with you people?
They're European. What can you expect?
Oh, fuck off, you yank. I'm not a European. I'm fucking British. Fuck off.
You're European.
Okay.
You're part of the European continent. You're European.
How dare you say that? We are an island.
Well then you're fucking.
Hey, I tell you guys what. I'll stop calling you European if you stop calling me a Yank. We got to deal.
I'll call you a Mexican instead, you prick.
Oh, God damn it.
I'll call you Confederate. There you go. I'll make you happy.
All right, that'll work.
Anyway, we were at the exciting. We just had an interlude there, but we were at the exciting point about where I I don't know, black people and white people were doing nasty things to each other at some point.
Yeah, I saw that video once.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah,
got.
I don't
Everybody got
understand why
happy
they have to
ending.
use pregnant. Why did they have to use pregnant women? It never made any sense to me. That.
To do what?
Never mind.
What were they using pregnant women for?
It doesn't matter right now.
Oh,
We'll
you're
come
talking
back to
about.
that
Right.
at
You're talking
a
about.
later date.
You're talking about certain films, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He got the streams crossed.
Yes. So
I've
anyway,
saw that-
where
I've
was
saw
it?
that film
Schumann
as well.
and the Mason-Dixon line we were at. The
I thought we
conflict
were
of
at
the
the point where
Mason-Dixon
Hitler had
line
done nothing wrong.
and people who couldn't be bothered to go home.
But no, anything else on John Brown you want to discuss, MC?
No, I'm good.
Wasn't there a song about John Brown?
I can tell you right now, the reason MC is being so quiet is he's deleting everything he has ever had to do with this radar stream. You know, he doesn't want anybody to know he's ever been here.
Hangouts, delete Hangouts. Google Plus, delete.
I got that shit fucking archived. He's screwed.
Well, we went from Oregon 2030 to Oregon 2025.
I don't think I'm
Oh,
ever going to
wait,
be able to
you're
get a visa to America now. I think I'm screwed.
I gotta up the process. Gotta move it forward a little quicker now.
There's definitely no visa for me.
No, the John Brown. The song was John Brown's body lies moldering.
Yeah, that's it.
Excuse
That's
me,
it. John Brown's body lies running.
Hang on. Could someone tell me who John Brown is for the non-Yank here?
You don't know the song? It's a famous.
I don't know who that is.
John Brown was a radical abolitionist who decided he wanted to start a race rebellion, a slave rebellion in the United States.
So he was black.
Yeah,
No,
but
he
he did it by killing white people.
And he took over the armory at Harper's Ferry in an effort to arm black slaves for the rebellion. And at Harper's Ferry, however, he couldn't get out of Harper's Ferry because the townspeople immediately surrounded him, and federal forces were called in. And they stormed.
Also, the black people couldn't get up on time to do.
Hang on here. So basically, this white guy went and armed blacks.
He went to arm the black slaves. That's what.
So basically, he was an SJW.
Yeah, I've been saying this for ages, mate. People are not getting the message. I keep saying this. He basically went out slaughtering white people on the blacks' behalf.
Fucking treasons.
You know?
Cunt.
Yeah. And he gets and nobody gets any thanks for that. You see? He's out there, you know, causing mayhem.
So who killed him?
And Robert E. Lee captured him. He didn't necessarily kill him. But Robert E. Lee and Jeb Stewart captured them. And they would be big name Jeb Stewart, not John Stewart.
And what was his end? Tell me he got what was coming to him.
He was hung in Virginia, sir.
There you go. Happy end now, bro.
So
and his
hung.
sons were shot.
And his rebellion, his attempted slave rebellion, they created a song on it, and that was John Brown's body lies a moldering in his grave. And
lies smoldering.
Moldering.
Yeah, molding. Moldering. It's American. They have to make up a word if they can't get it to rhyme.
What does it mean?
Moldering.
It means it's rotting.
It means, yeah.
Well, why can't you just say rotting then?
Molding.
Because the way that was the name of the way they wrote the song, and it was heard and shocked the sensibilities of one of the wives of one of the northern troops, who then
fucking women
who rewrote the words to it to mine eye.
Another blue-haired woman.
Of the coming of the Lord.
Yes, that's it. That's the reason I remember it. It's because it's to that bloody tune. That's right.
Women in SJWs, I tell you, ruin history all the fucking time.
The boat was a step too far, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, no, and I think John Brown was a terrorist. He deserved what he got, and I'm sorry. I don't like the death penalty, but he committed treason. Sorry, he did.
Yeah, but what equates to a terrorist? Well, surely, to the south, Lincoln was a terrorist, and to the, to Lincoln,
and he got what he was.
With
no, and if you ask me, he got what he had coming to him too. It was just 3 years.
So Robert E. Lee, he got a good kicking. That's okay.
Yeah, but let's be honest, John Wilkes Booth was a bit of a fucking incompetent asshole. He couldn't even make a decent escape. He jumped off the fucking thing and broke his leg.
Broke his foot.
Dude,
fucking idiot.
Fuck you. First off, that was brilliant. He jumped down off the balcony and went sic semper tyrannis, and he escaped. He crossed the bridge.
No, he didn't. He jumped down and shouted, "Jump!"
No, he broke his leg by being bucked off a horse crossing the bridge out into Virginia. He didn't break his leg jumping off the balcony. He broke it because he was bucked off a horse.
Oh, really?
That's the story I hear.
The story that usually gets told. Now the original story is that he jumped off when he fucked himself up jumping off the
It's impossible to know when he actually injured himself.
Well, there's plenty of people as witnesses, for God's sake. It was in a fucking auditorium. It's not like there were enough witnesses.
Really wanted to show how what would you say, how weak Lincoln was. All he had to do was sneak into the little alcove, bend Lincoln over the fucking front of it, and bugger him in front of all the guests, shouting, "The South will rise." That would have made him look,
with a gun at his head saying, "Take it, you bitch." There you go.
That's a little weird. Just saying. I don't know if I agree with that.
It's an alternate reality.
4.8 inches.
4.80 comes ago.
What I think is really interesting is John Wilkes Booth.
After the Mason-Dixie line, what really happened once they got across the border, when they started to truly do their nasty shit, with the Sherman thing and everything else, with the, what do they call it? What was that term that they used? I keep forgetting it. The slash and burn thing. Like the Sherman collars and everything. What was the term they used?
Total war or scorched earth? Scorched
earth. Yeah, the scorched earth policy. Yeah. And that seems a little bit unnecessary, doesn't it?
No.
Yeah, it does. Fuck you, MC.
Did it work?
You know what?
Well,
did it work? No. Did it work? That's a real fucking question. Let's look at Reconstruction.
Yeah.
Let's look at the KKK.
Look at the resentment. The resentment still stands. Yeah.
Let's look
about that in a different time. I can tell you right now.
Okay, all right.
That wouldn't have that had very little to do, all right, with how badly the South suffered. Sherman's march to the sea, and his march, yes, because his march to the sea was only through Georgia, but the destruction of southern cities was across the South due to the nature of war.
Yes, but it wasn't just attacking the cities; it was destroying. I mean, the whole point about those Sherman collars was that it's destroying their supply lines. It was destroying the supply lines, so they couldn't get anything.
It didn't matter. You got to remember, both sides were basically raping civilians of their food.
On the South, to be fair,
yes,
only ventured into the North on two occasions. When they attacked,
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the South. The Southern troops were just as devastated when they went gleaning for food, all right, as the Northern troops were.
Well, there's a difference between starving and raiding, is there not?
Not to the civilian who's losing his food.
No,
Fair
it's like
enough.
raping and pillaging. You know, they were basically the Vikings in a way.
There was not a lot of quote unquote raping and pillaging. That was a made up bullcrap from the frickin' South during.
Yes,
All right,
Oh,
so
yeah.
they were all
Made up
welcomed into their
bullshit
homes.
from
You
the
just
South.
said about stealing
I
people's
have
fucking
no,
food.
no,
and making
MC,
like that.
no, MC, no. Now
hang
you
on,
have
hang on,
me.
no. Back then, it wasn't rape. It was called a date back then.
Okay.
I have numbers that will disagree with you, sir.
Yeah,
When
you can take a look at the numbers and then take a look at the real numbers. All right, because one of the things that Sherman was a stickler for was discipline.
Absolutely.
One of the
He made
things-
sure that everybody had an equal
Turned
raping
them-
opportunity. He was an equal
Exactly, he
rape
turned them
opportunity.
loose.
He
And
did
they
not
did-
turn
no.
them loose the way
And not
you.
only did they make Georgia howl, but they went into South Carolina, the birthplace of Southern secession, and they
did.
tore it
When he got to Savannah, he then turned north and went into the northern, where the last Northern troops were, or the last army in the South resided.
Yeah.
As he was following them, as he was following Johnston.
He tore South Carolina apart, not because there was an army there, but because they were the birthplace of Southern secession. That's why he tore them apart. It was political.
There wasn't just political, and it wasn't nearly the kind of wanton destruction that you
Hang on, if
claim.
it wasn't political, what else was it? Well, economical? In what way?
Well, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to destroy the Southern ability to make war.
Yeah, hence
When
the
you're
the
dealing with a
burning
total war
process.
situation, you've got to attack it on all fronts, and that includes
Yeah, like salting the the land.
The areas are just as fertile today. There are plenty of farmers in those areas today.
No, the whole point of
salt
salting was
the
a Roman
area.
thing. That wasn't. Yeah, but no, I'm saying about the whole Sherman idea. I mean, it was pretty fucking brutal because you're certainly not helping the people. You're claiming you're liberating. I mean, what were they liberating the people? I mean, that's my question about what
They
Sherman
weren't
was
even.
trying to achieve.
They weren't even
subjugating.
liberating the slaves.
They
They
were
didn't give a fuck
subjugating.
about the slaves.
They
That's
couldn't.
what I mean. So they were subjugating the
To say
people
that they
who were
didn't
trying
care
to
about
release the
and
slaves.
having no ability to help the slaves are two different things. It's not
Sherman,
saying-
Hang
no,
on.
MC.
No, hang on. You're
no,
trying to
Sherman's
suppress the people
own-
who aren't the
Wait a
slaves.
minute.
You're suppressing
Wait
the
a minute.
slaves by emancipating them. That doesn't make
No,
any
wait a
sense.
minute. Sherman's own words dictate that he didn't give a fuck about the slaves. They clogged up his roadways and they got in the goddamn way, and he didn't fucking want them there. Don't tell me he did. Don't tell me he fucking cared.
Don't tell me
God
that
damn it.
is a total military situation. All right, that has absolutely nothing.
I
to do
have
with
his
how
own
you feel.
words.
Hold on,
I
that
have
has
his own
nothing to
words.
do with how you feel about the situation or whether you cared about these people or not. The situation dictated that guess what? You couldn't stick around. From a
No,
military
if
perspective,
you want to
what
be
you have the
the
ability
sacred
to do.
fucking savior of the goddamn union, then you should care about the people you're fucking freeing. God damn it.
You cannot sit up there and care about the people you're freeing at the sacrifice of the military objectives that you have.
But you're
That's
not freeing
called
them.
war.
You're oppressing them. How can you be
You're
freeing
not
them?
oppressing them.
Oppressing
He didn't
them,
go in
for
there and
fuck's
say,
sake.
"Here, come over here and
He
starve."
starved them. He burned their
It
It was
fucking.
your words.
He
You
did
said they
not.
went down to oppress.
He did
He
not
killed their fucking
starve
livestock.
them.
Yes,
Okay.
he did. Yes,
did.
he
He did. That's the whole point of the burning
So he-
process.
what he
Was
did
that
is
he
he
would deny
ran
them their
back-
own fucking
He
crops
ran
and everything
back
else.
the slaves, made sure that they didn't have any food, all right, and
Yeah,
left them to
that-
die
that-
after he basically gleaned all the food away from them.
You
Is that
know
what you're
what?
saying to me?
Yes, it is. It doesn't matter
No, it
whether
isn't,
it's a
because
white
that's not
settlement
what
or the
happened.
slave, because the slaves were living off the white people. If you subjugate the white South and you kill their livestock and you deprive them of food, how are they going to feed the goddamn slaves? You fucking dick.
That's
No,
not the same
he
thing as
put them all out to die.
did not sit up
Look,
there
if you
and-
remove a food supply, you can't
Look,
say you're enhancing the
If
life
you can't
of
understand
somebody.
what's going to happen in a war, if you do not understand what war is like, And you cannot tell people whether they cared or did not care for something. When you're dealing, hold on, shut up a second. When you're in the military, your feelings are unimportant. The objective is the mission. Period. And
but
then your
the
troops.
South. No, the South invaded the North.
Well, exactly. So then don't claim that they're trying to do anything altruistic. There was fuck all altruistic about what Sherman was doing.
Why the South? Why they were down there? The reason they were down there is a different situation than the military objectives that are being applied. And for you guys to sit up there and try and conflate the two and say, "Oh no, it's either this or this," is absolute nonsense.
No,
you're saying this or this because you're claiming one thing.
No, it's your claim.
We're just pointing out that maybe it isn't actually quite as cut and dried as you pretend it is, because
you guys are the ones that are making the statement that he didn't care and he wanted them to starve. And that's where I draw the line.
No, Sherman didn't give a shit. He was a soldier. He wasn't a politician, and he wasn't dealing with anything else. Like you say, he was doing the mission. But what I'm saying is, don't pretend that he was doing anything altruistic. Don't fuck all altruistic about his actions.
No, wait a minute.
He certainly wasn't trying to free any slaves.
Bullshit. Now, you can sit up there and talk about the situation as it exists, or you can talk about how the military situation is on the ground, and you know this as well as I do, Cabbage. Just because you're going into an area to free it, right, doesn't mean that you run house to house and go, oh, here's a meal situation, here's how this goes. And you know that. In World War II, there were a lot of people in France that got their entire houses and everything destroyed in our quote-unquote attempting to free them. So don't come back to me and tell me, oh, well, you didn't care, that's why you wouldn't France.
Oh, I will, because
there's a difference between a house getting blown up and intentionally burning all of the resources around it, which is what Sherman did.
That is a scorched earth policy in a different.
That's what I'm saying. The scorched earth policy is what went with it.
No, I get a rebuttal.
Didn't begin until almost the latter part of the war. It was after Atlanta had already fallen. It was after frickin' Lincoln had won the war. It was the last year of the war.
No, I get a rebuttal, goddammit. And when the South moved into Maryland,
you're roboting a wee bit, your rebuttal would sound better if it wasn't, getting cut up a bit. And MC, stop lumping me in with them too.
What?
I haven't said anything to you in ages. Leave me the fuck alone. I'm sitting out here in the corner and not saying anything. So don't lump me in with people.
Yes, but you do agree with me
that was making the comment about the
free boat
the spa for Auschwitz.
So? No.
See?
All right, I'm back. If that's better, no.
Yes, perfect.
First off, MC, God damn it. When we moved into Maryland and we moved into Pennsylvania, we did not burn down the people's houses. We might have took some food. Yeah, they were starving.
Why you have took some food?
Okay, did, whatever. But you know what? What the North did when they moved
there might have been a degree of misappropriation.
When the North moved through Georgia, South Carolina, even when they sacked New Orleans, they burnt everything around them. The South did not do that. You know why?
Burn New Orleans, and they didn't even burn Atlanta.
They didn't burn Atlanta.
No.
They didn't burn Atlanta.
No, they didn't burn Atlanta.
Oh, then how did it burn? Just someone put a cigarette out?
They set fire to the military stores that were there as they left.
And I bet you didn't burn Richmond either, huh?
Richmond didn't burn the way you think it did. The main problem with both of those were the fact that you're dealing with wood huts, all right, in a different area. And I'm not saying that when you start talking about how bad some of the burning took place, all right, but to come back and say that this was they intended to burn or raise the city to the ground. I can tell you right now, if they had intended to raise the city to the ground, it would have been done differently and in a military manner, and there wouldn't have been an Atlanta left.
Well, I'll tell you what.
There would have been a Richmond left. You have no idea how what it's like, or what you can actually do when you're in the military and you've got a surrounded city or a city that's prostate. Okay, if you want to take a look at what it's like, go ask Carthage.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. Richmond is a hard road to travel, MC. Richmond is a hard road to travel.
Yes, and by the way, I do have to ask this question, right? All these efforts that went in by the white people to free that. Does anyone ever hear any thanks? Is there any gratitude back for all of these? Apparently. Grand escapade on behalf of.
So they were
Wait,
going. So
you mean-
the troops that fought in the Civil War did it so they could get an attaboy and a thank you.
I'm
Well,
saying,
yeah, right.
Is there like a thank you Sunday or something? I mean, sure.
Well, no, Cabbage.
You got Black History Month. I mean, surely a thank you Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why Black History Month. During this month, once a week, I'll be doing Confederate History Month, and we will be talking about the Great Confederacy. Once a week, all month, and it's gonna happen. Fuck Black History Month. I don't give a shit anymore. We already had MLK Day. I celebrated that. You can fuck off. It's time for some Confederate history. I've had it. And you know what? Sherman would have fucked up if Stonewall was still around and they could have moved him towards the west and he could have stopped Sherman.
No, he couldn't.
Just throwing that out there. Oh, you tell me Stonewall versus Sherman. Death match. Come on. Stonewall would have fucked Sherman up, dude.
No, he wouldn't have.
Oh, MC. I like you, buddy, but god damn it, man. You're wrong.
Nope. The whole
Nope. Do you not see the battles where Stonewall fought?
The whole thing.
Come on.
The whole gambit. All right. Of Jackson, and Jackson wasn't the invincible hero that you think he is.
Oh wait, now you're gonna diss Jackson? All right,
I'm sorry.
I think we're gonna.
Hang on.
I'm not dissing Jackson.
MC. You did it wrong. When you said nope, you should have just stopped talking. You won the argument. Just when you said nope, when you started explaining it, you lost the argument.
All right, I just did it with a nope there. Nope.
Yeah, exactly. Just nope. That's it.
Well, it's too late now. I already won. Like you heard him. Stonewall would have kicked his ass.
And anyway, them buildings burnt down because some fucker didn't put their pipe out.
Well, no, I would have replaced Braxton Bragg.
They didn't pay
it was a
fire
black
insurance
guy,
is what
too.
the issue was.
The lazy bastard, probably just sitting on the side of a porch.
Oh, and I'm sure MC hates
Probably getting
Forrest.
paid,
Right?
subsidized.
You don't much like Forrest, do you?
Fort Pillow.
Fort Pillow was righteous. Fuck them.
Hang on. Did someone actually name a Fort Pillow?
Yeah, Fort Pillow is a thing, and fuck them. They stood out.
And you banned it.
I'll let you
What a
Google
surprise.
it. I'll let you Google it. Voice of one, so you know.
I'm actually going to fucking do that because that just sounds stupid.
Yeah.
No.
Fort
Pillow,
Pillow.
yeah, well,
Look at Fort Pillow
that's-
Massacre.
We will have
That's
a
just
whole
begging.
stream.
That's begging to be burnt. That really.
We
is.
will have a whole
Either burnt
stream
or
on
swept
Fort
on.
Pillow because I
Were they
don't
all asleep
believe.
Were they all asleep when the people arrived?
Well, no, I don't believe that General Forrest did exactly what they say he did at Fort Pillow. I don't believe that. I believe that was his underlings, and we can have that argument, but not tonight, or else it's going to be another 2 hours because I will go after you on Fort Pillow and see.
Well, like, let's be honest, it was only 300 black people, so
No,
like, who's
seriously.
worrying about it?
It's like you want to bring up Andersonville, man, and I will throw back at you the Yankee prison camps. You want to, come on now. We got tick for tack here, buddy.
Okay, well, you really want to start talking about this. You want to start throwing tit for tat. Explain this. Why was it that when the northern prisoners were traded back, they lived up to the idea that they were exchanged and wouldn't continue the fight, but the southerners were constantly found, like, once again on the battlefield,
Principle.
digging on the
honor.
promise that they made.
No, the South
Yeah,
didn't have
their
as many
honor-
fucking
Their
men to
honor
fight.
had the difference was their honor only went to the front of their nose.
Bullshit. No, the South didn't have the men to fight the
Went to
war.
the front of the
You know
pillow.
that. No, look at the fucking immigration that you want to talk about. How about a war? How about a wall up there in
You
fucking
had-
New York?
You
How
had
about that?
3/5. You could have had far more than men. All you had to do is free the slaves.
Actually, I'm reading a
And
sport
we
pillow.
did, you
No,
dick. And we fucking did. At the
No.
end of the war, we gave up
The-
slavery
when the-
for
when the-
liberty.
when the
That
The
war
Mason
happened.
was
Dixie line
when the
should be
war
the
was
American version of
already
Hadrian's Wall.
no, I think the sport pillow thing was actually mercy because remember you've been talking about the last half hour because there wasn't enough food to feed people, so that way it's better to kill them quickly than have them starve to death. So like, it was a
Yeah.
humanitarian act, you know.
That's right. With voice, he's using your argument. There we go. It's absolutely fucking suitable.
Right?
Yeah.
Now,
Oh,
come on.
So it's okay to
Argue that point.
just massacre them.
Well, if you what would you
fuck
rather
'em.
have? Would you rather have someone stab you through the
Okay,
head or make you starve to
I'll
death?
remember that comment the next time we talk about Sheridan.
Fuck Sheridan. No.
All I've heard so far is fuck everybody.
Yeah, you can make me pivot real quick when you bring up Sheridan or Sherman or Bragg. I fucking hate Bragg. You want me to argue against the South? I will argue against Braxton fucking
I'm
Bragg.
guessing this
That
Bragg
fucking
fella
dude.
I take it that's who's got the fort named after him.
Fort Bragg, yeah.
Yeah, he's a fucking douchebag. He was a piece of shit. God damn it. He put PT Beauregard out there to die, right, MC? He has
That's
left
why
him
the
hanging.
North built a fort to him. If he'd been incompetent, they wouldn't have built a fort to him.
I know, right?
Really?
There's
That's
no
why we have Fort
Robert
Jackson.
Lee.
That's
There's
why
no
we have.
Fort.
That's why we have Fort Lee.
Is there a Fort Lee?
Yes. Fort Lee, Maryland.
Damn it. Oh,
See?
okay. I was going to say there wasn't, but damn it. Wait.
If he's competent.
Is there a Fort Stewart?
Yes.
Damn it.
Although they
right.
recently closed it.
Wait, they closed Fort Stewart?
No, Fort Stewart's still open. I'm sorry. Let's think of a different.
Oh,
No, Fort Stewart's still open.
okay. Well, as long as they
Fort
didn't
Stewart's
close
north.
Fort Stewart, then. No, see, and that's the thing I kind of like
We have
is the
Fort
American military. Yeah, exactly. Fort Hood, Fort
Hood.
Meade,
You have Fort
Stewart.
Devens.
Yeah,
You have Fort Leonard Wood.
yeah. No, the military recognizes the South. The public doesn't, right, MC?
Fort Polk. Yes, the military does recognize the South as far as the Southern generals.
Well, you got to respect, your opposition at the end of the day. I mean, if people fight with, gusto, then you have to respect that.
Well,
Even
the
if they
rebel
lose.
yell.
I mean, hell, look.
We don't have a Fort. We don't
even
have
the
a Fort
Scottish.
Grant.
Don't you? I did. I thought you had a Fort Grant.
No Fort
Well,
Grant.
there's a Grant something. No, you probably got a fucking library or something named after him.
Well,
There's a
all
Grant
presidents have a library. There's always a president.
okay, that's it then.
So, I'm still down to keep bullshitting, but what do you guys think about the Lee University? They want to drop the Lee. It's what is it? Lee and something University. They want to just cut Lee out. He was president of that university. He kind of helped founded it. I don't think they should cut him out of it. Maybe I'm just partisan. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think that's an absolute fucking disgrace. That's again cutting out history. This is exactly what it says in 1984. The revisionist history system. Trying to recreate the past.
If you're going to, the thing is, Mad Dodge,
So wrong.
While I agree with you, all right, the problem is look at your own rhetoric when you talk about Lincoln. When you dehumanize these figures and you say that they're just pieces of shit, all right, without going into the totality of who these people were and what they meant to the nation, then it becomes very easy to just cherry pick certain aspects of them.
Oh, but come on, North people do the same thing. I mean, the idea that it seems to be these regions, and it's because of the Confederacy, right?
I'm not talking about it from a northern versus southern level.
Can't claim you've got to hold him up to a higher standard than
I'm
anyone else.
holding him up
That's
to a
nonsense.
personal standard, the same personal standard that he's trying to utilize, which I don't disagree with, as I've said.
Well, then you shouldn't have any problem with saying it's inappropriate to take the Lee off the front of an Emory University. Then it should be a simple question. It's like, no, that's inappropriate. It's not a difficult question.
I believe MC did say that. I believe MC did say that. But to defend myself a little bit, sir, I do hold Lincoln to a high standard. I have read a lot on him. And after coming out of school, I was totally anti-Confederate. This took me reading and listening to lectures and deciding for myself to come to my own point of view that I have now. I went through the same school system we all do in the U.S. Lincoln is good. The South is bad. There you go. So I do believe I give Lincoln the respect he's deserved. Maybe I don't come across that way.
He got what he deserved. He got a traitor's
That's right. Well, yeah. Come on.
Come on now.
Fair
enough. Got a cap in his ass. So just preparing you for the, for the. Yeah, that's just preparing you for the black invasion.
There's never been a black invasion.
I know.
Black invasion. Black History Month, everybody. Welcome to the Red Eye stream tomorrow. We're going to be talking about that.
Welcome to the Lincoln cap in your ass. Black Month.
But no, I do respect Lincoln's ideas. I believe he's wrong on the formation of the Union. His arguments are very wrong, in my opinion. I have read his points of view, and I disagree. And if that makes me bad and biased, then so be it. I am. I have my points of view, and I don't necessarily agree with him at all. So, there we go.
I'm not asking for you to agree with him, but you're not looking at him from as a historical figure and giving him his due.
Yes, but in the principles of the idea that the states were meant to have their own autonomy and be able to manage their own, their own rights and things, it still confuses me under what perspective it was, that they felt they had the right to do this. It seems very much like the right of conquest.
No.
We can do this to you because we can do it.
It has to do with the fact of what is a nation.
Well, the thing is, each individual state was recognized.
Hold on. But each individual state does not determine whether or not it joins the Union. That is not the determinant, and that's what the argument is.
Well, the state has to propose.
Exactly. So it's imposition. Yeah, it's imposed. So therefore, the states' rights were not recognized or respected.
It's not that it was imposed. It's not an imposition. It's a matter of you have to petition and then be allowed to have entry.
Yeah, but the thing is also, if you disagree with, if you say we're not entering because we don't want to agree to your criteria, then they just say, well, you're going to fucking accept it, or whether you like it or not. That's a very different issue.
If you petition to enter, then you have to petition to leave.
Which we did.
No, you didn't.
Yes, no, we did.
You didn't. You did not petition to leave.
Yes, we did. We had state.
Was there a vote in Congress that on whether or not the southern states could succeed?
No. Did you petition to leave? And then was it not permitted? Was it not permitted?
No.
The answer is no.
The answer is no, but there didn't need to be because it was a given that the states had a right to leave.
Petition to leave.
No, see,
and whether you
our
like
argument,
it or not,
hang on a second. You're claiming that you have to petition to leave. Where is it that's claimed that you have to do a petition to leave? Is it like in any of the? No, I mean,
I am trying to tell you.
No, but I put
it this way: a member of the United States is Congress. Whether a state is admitted or not goes through Congress. It's legislation.
Have
All right,
you heard?
you
That's what I'm
on
saying,
your
is
own
where is it
cannot
written?
determine. Hold
Wait a
on,
minute.
you cannot change that legislation. All right,
Have
on your
you
own.
have you heard Jefferson Davis's departing
I don't
speech from
Care about
Congress?
his departing speech.
The bird
It
is the
still
word.
comes
Have you-
down to the fact
Have you
that
heard
No,
about the
no, wait a
bird?
minute. No. You just lectured me on Lincoln. Have you listened to Jefferson Davis's speech?
it's immaterial.
It is material because it gives you
No.
context into the argument that they are having.
You can argue that. You can argue that viewpoint.
He
but you
was
can't
Secretary
argue
of
against-
War. No, he
You
was
cannot
Secretary of
argue
War.
against, regardless of what he was and what positions he held. All right, you have yet to come back and explain to me. All right, the logic behind
I
on
can
your
get-
own.
okay.
Okay,
I'll
hold
do
on,
it
hold
right
on.
now.
Hold on. You have yet to sit up there and explain to me how Congress is somehow excluded out of the loop. If it's part of the loop to bring you into the nation as a state, then it has to be part of that option to go out. And that cannot be determined, all right, if you do not petition to be released from statehood, something that you
No.
never did.
No, the
No.
statehood is sovereignty, isn't it? I mean, it's still meant to be declared as sovereign. I mean,
Well, no.
you're saying, so you're
When-
actually claiming no state has actual sovereignty.
Not once it
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying? That there is no such thing
Yeah.
as state
He
sovereignty.
is claiming the Lincoln point of view here. He is claiming the Lincoln point of view, and it's revisionist.
I'm not just
It's
giving you the
revisionist.
Lincoln point of view. I'm going to show you the difference. Okay,
Mm.
the United States
dubious to me.
has had a certain state called Texas. Texas was its own nation.
Still declares
And
itself
Texas
has
had
its own
every right to
secession
join
rights.
the Confederacy when it did. It had every right to leave the Union.
We're not arguing that point. The point is it
And
wasn't
it's
part of the
retained its
United
right to
States
secede.
because it wanted to be. And it wasn't just it didn't come into the United States because it determined on its own that it wanted to be part of the United States. In fact, it petitioned several times to be allowed to be part of the United States before they were finally admitted. All right, so the idea that a state has that kind of sovereignty over the federal government is nonsense.
No, it's not.
It's not. No, I'm
No.
not saying that the state has sovereignty over the federal. What I'm saying is that if
I
they
am.
say that we don't want to be part of this federal system, then the
You
federal
can't-
system has
that's
no
not-
right to impose
Well,
itself
no.
upon them.
Can't
I am. No, I am saying.
can't determine that if you were part of the system, all right, that now on your own.
Oh my God! This is
We are
like the
no longer
European
gonna be-
Union. This is
we're
what we're
gonna be
going through with
part of it now.
Brexit.
No,
I swear to
and-
God, I am so
This is
glad you're
not-
not English during this Brexit period because you'd be
This is
arguing
not
for the
Brexit
fucking...
is something completely different.
No, it isn't.
Do
It's
not
very
even try and
similar to
conflate the
exact-
two.
No, the arguments
Well, no,
that you're
MC.
using are precisely the arguments which are being used against us having the right to leave them. You know, to secede.
We entered a joint compact between the states. If I join a club with UMC
This
and
is not a
Cabbage,
club. A nation is not
This
a club.
is a
Do
club.
not try and
This-
bring this up and try and act like it's a club because it's not a club.
it
Okay.
is a perfectly
It is
good
not a club.
analogy.
Do not.
It's
It's not a
perfectly
club.
good
It's
analogy.
not a
So like
group
the
of- it's not a
fucking
group of
Brexit.
people on their own that have their own individual rights.
We have
Right,
a
as far
right
as
to
their own
leave a
sovereignty.
compact that we
You do
joined
not have the right to.
voluntarily.
You do not have the
Yes,
right
we
to leave.
do.
You do not have the right to leave the United States. This is
Yes,
a
we
state
do.
issue. You do not, and you did not.
States make up the federal government, not the
You
other
are
way around.
allowed into the United
That is
States
a
by an
basic
act.
problem.
You are allowed into the United States by an act of Congress. If you
This is
want
the
to
basic
no longer
problem
be part
we
of the
have.
United States, hold on. If you
Yeah.
if you no longer
No,
want to be
MC,
part of the
this is
United
the difference.
If
Exactly
keep
this.
interrupting me when I never finish, Cabbage, this discussion will be over.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, you're gonna rage quit. Now go on.
If you cannot sit up there and come into the if you come into the United States with legislation, then it's going to take legislation, the people's representatives, to determine to let you out. That was never allowed.
Bullshit. The people of the states
It
decided
wasn't-
to
no,
leave
each
the
individual
union.
state
That's
doesn't
what
matter.
happened. They
Each individual
had
state, no, wrong,
Yes, it
because each
does.
individual
the
no, it's
state
not.
is to determine its citizenship. If it doesn't want to be in the goddamn union, it doesn't need to be. The
It was
state
all-
itself
hold on.
can leave.
Hold on. If it didn't want to be in the
Calhoun,
You know,
union,
the
Calhoun
arguments.
himself.
you know-
you were not part of the union until Congress Notice
Then
the
why?
word
No, then
Congress.
why?
Put you in.
Then why did the union kick us out and tell us we couldn't come back unless
That's a
we
separate issue.
enforce? No, it's
You
not. That is the same fucking
you,
issue,
no, no, no,
sir.
no, no. That
No,
is that
no.
is that
You
is that
can't
is the
say we
I'm
were
sorry,
hold on,
MC.
hold
You
on.
can't say
That is
we're
the
fully
You sound
within
like
hold on a
and
second.
Jean-Claude
without the union.
Juncker.
Hold
We
on.
are
That is
within and
that is.
without the union.
If you let me answer, I will explain this.
You
That's
sound
a
like
different
Jean-Claude
discussion.
Juncker.
That's a discussion on Reconstruction, and I would agree with you on Reconstruction in those regards. All right, that you were never separate from the Union. Okay, that's a separate argument.
Is the United States made up of the states, or is it made up of the federal institution?
Both. The Constitution lays out the structure of the government.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, yeah. But so where
quote the
does the
10th
sovereignty
Amendment.
of the state come in?
Let me quote
At
the
which
10th
point
Amendment.
does the
10th Amendment is what specifically guarantees.
where does a state
That's right.
sovereignty get denied? Where is the state denied its
Well, it
sovereignty?
doesn't get
That's the-
denied. It doesn't get denied.
well, it
Here,
must do
Cabbage,
if
the
you're not
10th
allowed to
Amendment.
make your own decisions.
You are
Any power not delegated to the federal government or the people itself is delegated to the state or the people.
Right.
So any
and one
law,
of the powers that is given to Congress is the admission of states.
no, but in the 10th Amendment, the power that's not mentioned in the Constitution
Right.
is
the
secession.
admission of states
is secession is left
admission
to the
of
state
states
or the people.
it is in the Constitution when it talks about the admission of the state.
We are allowed to secede. That was a given
you
all the
were
way
not allowed
up
to
until
secede.
the Civil War. That was a given. Massachusetts
you
wanted to leave, and the South said, "Good riddance, be gone with you, sir."
and the
That
and the-
happened.
and the-
that is in
and
our
they
history. That happened.
hold on. Did they secede?
No, but they were a fucking hair away, sir. And nobody cared. Nobody cared.
No, they weren't
were going to
weren't
let
that
them leave.
close. And they
Why?
would've been-
Because they
and
had a
could've-
right to
hold on.
leave.
And they could have been voted out. They were going to petition to leave.
Okay, right. So you say that no, you can't do it. So everyone else
No,
has to
I'm
cut.
saying
It's
that-
like the crabs
once
keeping
again, I'm
everybody
not
in the
saying You
bucket.
can't do it. I'm saying that there is a legal framework and a legal process. If you are admitted to the United States with a vote from Congress, then you have to be removed from the statehood by a vote in Congress.
Well, how are you going to do that, MC? When
Well, then you don't have any.
No,
You don't
wait a
have any
minute, Cabbage.
sovereignty at that point. No, you've already removed your right.
No, you don't
to
have.
anything.
You don't have
You
total sovereignty.
You forfeited
Well,
your
no,
right.
that's my
The
point.
You forfeited your sovereignty
You
at
had
that
to
point.
recognize the
We
reason
revoked
that
our senators. We revoked our congressmen.
it doesn't matter what you did. Okay, it's a matter because it's a matter of Congress and what Congress does.
What happens with all those empty seats? They're going to vote in favor of keeping them
Whose
in.
fault is that?
But they left because they were recalled to their states because their states
once
left
again,
the
whose
union.
fault? That is not
If
the
their
fault
states
of the
leave the
United.
union-
Hold on, that was not the fault of the United States. That's the fault of the individual state.
What do you mean? If you leave the union, are you going to
You
leave
can't
your
leave the
senators there?
union without
So you can't
petitioning
leave
and
the
getting
union.
legislation that says you are no longer part of the
There you
union.
go. You can't leave the union, so therefore you don't have sovereignty. Otherwise,
I
you
do.
would just
Once
be able
again,
to say, "Fuck
Cabbage,
you,"
you're putting
and I'm
words
not-
in my
I'm
mouth
not
because
there.
you know
I'm
for a
not
fact
putting
how
words
many
in your
different
mouth.
times did
I'm
I
just
say that there was a process to leave and that they never followed the process.
Yeah.
You keep
But
coming
they
back
did.
saying
Yeah,
you can't
but,
do it.
They
like I
had-
said, and this is exactly what the problem
Well,
is with the European Union. We're
how
having the
far-
same fucking argument over here, and it's all federalist bullshit because they say, well, you have sovereignty, but you're not allowed to have an opinion. You know, you can't do what you want to.
Well, no,
So,
and I
you know,
wanna know.
like, yes, you're free. You're free to do what we tell you to do, and that's it. That's the way that it works, and that seems to be the case in this
Well,
instance.
you don't know what you're talking about. Your problem in
Yeah,
the
of
European
course
Union
I
has
don't.
nothing to do with this, so shut up.
No, I'm saying it's a very comparative study. That's
It's
what
not
I'm
even
saying.
close.
Oh, it's very close if you actually took the time to look at it, but you don't know what you're talking about, so you can shut up on that issue. How about that?
No, you don't know what you're talking about because you don't know anything about the United States and how it was formed.
But
Any
I
more than
do.
Mad
I know
Dogs, that's another,
nothing.
and that goes back to
All right.
another thing. Mad Dodge is you're not respecting, all right, the structure and of the government when you do it the way you're talking about it. You're just totally ignoring the other aspects of it, saying, "Well, I
Well,
don't
you know
like
nothing
that
either,
aspect,
so you can
therefore-"
shut up as well.
Well, no, I want to know.
You don't know anything. Nobody knows anything. Apparently, it's only the federal government that knows everything that needs to be imposed upon people. So that
you and the federal government, like you know anything about the federal government in the United States.
Federalism.
Well, no, and I would like.
You know, you're being that's just bitchy. That's
well, no, I would like to know.
Trying to tell me what the United States is like and what our history really means, because you have no freaking clue.
But I do.
No.
I read our history, and I do know what the Constitution was set up about. I've read it a million times. I own it.
Can you become a state in the United States without admission by Congress?
No, but can you leave it?
And you can't leave without an admission by Congress.
Okay,
this is the same argument, all right? And I am applying it in this regard. This is the same argument from the Dred Scott decision, where they said you cannot change immigration status, all right, as a state, a federal immigration status as a state. It has to be done through Congress. This is why Congress is so important, and it's supposed to be the most powerful portion of our federal government, even though it's our weakest at this point.
Okay, but if you join through a declaration of the states, and your state decides to leave, which it did,
you join.
You recall your state representative. You can't leave
just because you recall your state representative doesn't mean you're not part of the union. It does not absolve you out of the union.
How can they tell me? No. Then we fast forward back to Reconstruction, because how can you tell me that I wasn't a part of the union when you say I was?
I'm not the one who told you that. I've told you before that I thought that was wrong. You're not listening to me.
I am listening to you, but the basis of the argument gets fucked up when you go forward.
The basis of that argument.
I know. The thing is, because you don't know nothing about it.
The basis of that argument gets screwed up because the person who had that as a primary view got shot in the head.
You're right. He should have been kidnapped and traded for ransom. That way the South's going to continue their war. But we'll move on from that. God damn it. Well, no, and there was a couple plots to kidnap Lincoln instead of shoot him, but they didn't work out. So he got the.
No, actually, but don't forget, Lincoln wasn't the shooting at Lincoln wasn't just Lincoln getting shot. There was who else got shot? There's about 2 or 3 other people got shot at the same time.
Secretary of War.
It was a coup d'etat, wasn't it?
There was another one.
Oh God, I wish Stanton
because they weren't trying to take over.
I wish Stanton would have got fucking killed. Stanton was the real issue during Reconstruction. I would have preferred Stanton got killed over Lincoln, to be honest. But
it amazes me though that most people don't know that there were so many other people involved in that. So that say coup d'état, but you know what I mean. It was certainly a change of the guard, let's say.
Well, they were trying to assassinate.
It was more significant than just Lincoln.
It was more significant than Lincoln. You're correct.
Well, John Wilkes Booth saw the writing on the wall. He knew the South was going to lose. In his mind, he was like, hey, I'm an actor. I'm around these people. Maybe I could do something. That's what I really feel like he thought.
And what he did made everything absolutely worse.
Oh, yeah. No, just think about it from his point of view. He got to Virginia, man, and nobody would take him in other than Mudd. And then Mudd got hung. Goddamn.
It's quite interesting when you go back and you look at history. A lot of these people, they were involved with a lot of artists and, people, actors.
Oh, you want to get really crazy, Cabbage?
Tends to be pretty engaged if you look at it,
actors.
Cabbage, you want to get really crazy? John Wilkes Booth, his brother, rescued Abraham Lincoln's son from being hit by a train.
I bet he regretted that.
Oh, no, because his brother wasn't a part of the plot or nothing. No. They were actually cleared of everything. But yeah, his brother saved Lincoln's son. That's how small the world is. That's insane, right?
Yeah. Everyone knew everyone back in the day, though, didn't they?
Well, it was a total accident. He didn't even realize that he was saving Lincoln's son.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just ripped the kid off the tracks, right? He just,
He
saved his life.
Right, he fell off the
Yeah.
tracks or something, or fell onto the tracks.
Human instinct.
But
it is
okay.
odd, how many people are like artists and things who, involved in. I mean, the revolution that went on in Russia.
Well, you got to
French
remember, artists,
Revolution,
the role artists have allows them something that even during all these time frames that most people didn't have, which was freedom of movement. So,
which I guess is why Hitler tried to shut it down, right? Because he shut down all of the, the theaters, the comedy.
It's also to control, and at that time, I mean, you're developing mass media at that point. So, I mean, he was also trying to control it. But yes,
Goebbels.
The prevention of movement was one of the things that was within that he thought about, because like I said, actors and actresses have always had an interesting position in that they always used to be able to travel from place to place to place, and so they always were a portion of where, okay, if I'm going to infiltrate into another nation, if I'm going to infiltrate into one of these kind of plots and something like that, they're a natural point because of their freedom of movement throughout history.
Yeah, look at Mata Hari. You remember Mata Hari?
Yep.
She
was an entertainer.
She was an entertainer. Yeah, big entertainer. She did the what was it, the fan dance or something? Yeah, she entertained an awful lot of people.
Well, yeah, and supposedly John Wilkes Booth was up in Canada talking to the Confederate Secret Service and doing all that, but they were trying to get a kidnapping scheme together. The Confederates never wanted him to kill Lincoln because a head of state is off limits. The South had a gentleman's code, unlike the Yankees, MC.
Your gentleman's code didn't live up to scrutiny.
Yeah, I'm going to say, are you saying that John Wilkes Booth was just a maverick? Was he just off the grid?
He was he was an agent that went off the rails. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that wasn't dictated by the Confederacy. There's no way.
He didn't have orders to do that from anybody in the hierarchy.
No, it was his.
He did it himself, just off his own back.
It was his plot. It was the plot he came up with. That I do.
It's a lone gunman again.
Well, not lone. He had a couple of people with him. One of them
like I said,
through, but yeah.
Yeah, it was a bigger issue than that. Like I said, it's the whole plot is so much broader, but people never seem to get it. How many and they were very selected targets that they picked off. It wasn't the president and the the war, the head of the war, and when they were trying to cut the head off the the serpent.
Well, yeah, they're trying to save the lost cause, which at that point it was lost. It was 3 days after Lee surrendered. I mean, the war was over.
Yeah, Appomattox had already fallen. Lincoln had actually driven through Richmond.
Well, Lincoln hadn't, but his forces had.
Lincoln had already driven through Richmond.
Personally.
What a dick.
Oh, yes, he did, didn't he? In a carriage. There was a particular thing about him.
Oh, I'm sure he loved the burning city, that fucking prick.
You really don't look at the humanity of the man at all, do you?
No, I really don't fucking like him. I really don't.
And that's part of the problem, is you don't give him his due.
Yes, we're going back to the original part of the conversation. I mean, the fact is that he did still say that I wouldn't have released, a single black person if it were.
That's not what he said. He said, if I could save the Union this way versus that way.
Yes, exactly.
Difference,
which is pretty much the same
priority. That's a difference from a priority scheme.
Yes, exactly. But it's also a point of principle, and his principles were not about the black people. His principles were about the Union.
Well, at that point,
they never were. Read the Lincoln-Douglas debates, and you will know Lincoln's thoughts. He spells them out there clearly.
The problem with during the Douglas-Lincoln debates was, okay, and this question was asked in a similar manner by Styx when he was talking to Richard Spencer. Okay, how are you going to do this? All right, if you free the slaves, then okay. So that's what you start referring to is okay, what solutions do you have? The reason is because the slaves, let's be honest, are uneducated. All right, they're not part of the culture as it exists within the quote unquote white culture, if you want to look at it from that standpoint. So he was answering it from that perspective. But that's not saying he didn't care about or recognize the humanity of black people.
No, but he just
Or the
wanted to deport
evilness.
them. And that's not even the point. That's not even the point. If you look at Reconstruction, they put these uneducated people in charge of the whole goddamn South.
I hate to tell you this, but Reconstruction was not Lincoln's idea.
No, it wasn't.
Blame that on Lincoln.
You're right.
You know
You're right. You are right. You are absolutely right. It was not Lincoln. It was Stanton, and it was oh God, who was his VP?
Well, VP
it's
was,
escaping my mind.
Johnson. Andrew Johnson.
Yeah, and Johnson wanted to protect the South. He shielded it for a while, and then never got reelected. And then who took over? Yeah, he got impeached. Who took over after that? Because it wasn't Grant. Grant took a while. It was?
It was Grant.
Okay, so Grant put the Reconstruction in. That makes it even worse.
No,
fuck Grant. Right.
I suggest that link I left you does a really good job about what Grant was trying to do, what Grant was like during his presidential years and above.
I listened to the I got the first 5 minutes through so far. I'll go back to it. But
listen to that
discussion. I hate Grant, dude. I really don't like that. And I don't care that he drank. I'm a drinker. I would have drank with him, maybe.
I'm arguing that point. But I'm just saying that if you want to know more about what Grant was like, you're putting these 2D caricatures on these living, breathing people and what they were actually like. Whether it was Grant,
well, so are you.
But the like thing is very subjective. I mean,
and so are you with Jefferson Davis.
When people go on about Churchill, right? They say Churchill's wonderful.
There was
Jefferson Davis. There's
your idea of Jefferson Davis is he was a fucking no, but MC, your idea of Jefferson Davis is he was a fucking slave owning fucking piece of shit, and he deserved everything he got. No, but I gotten that vibe.
You've gotten that vibe because I was responding to your snide comments about Lincoln, and I was giving it back in turn.
Yeah, petticoat fucking comments and shit. No, man.
Petticoat comments.
I did make petticoat comments. Right. Oh. But I was giving it back to him because he was off the rails.
Yeah, but you're saying that like it's about subjective, and you're not putting these people in 3D. You're just looking at them at 2D. It's not. I mean, it's the same thing. It's a question of perspective. We had aristocrats over here in the UK during the Second World War. Saying, oh, have you met Hitler? Oh, he's got beautiful blue eyes. Fabulous character. People loved him. As an individual. As a person. I mean, maybe he was a nice guy to have a drink with, but that doesn't mean that it's somebody that you want to engage with. It's, yeah, but that's what I'm saying is you take a 2D, and you say that, well, that was 2D, but then when you look at the 3D character, then you start seeing what the substance is. So, and it depends on which part you're looking at as to which part you perceive to be 3D, and apparently to you, which parts are 2D.
Well, no, and I would love to have a Hitler on the Red Eye stream. I just think that would get a lot of views. I'm just throwing that out there.
That'd be awesome. You need an Austrian. Yeah, we need to invite an Austrian. A full-blown, hardcore Austrian.
Yeah, it starts quoting Mein Kampf and shit. It'll be great.
That'd be funny as hell. Well, then again, having said that, isn't that the whole point of that speech that I gave you with Tyndall? I gave you that thing because that's going to give you the same kind of material. Have you seen that, MC? You need to see that. Actually, MC would be really good for you, 40, and an MC. That would be fucking brilliant. I want to sit back and listen to that stream. as the three of you debate
which
it.
person are you talking
It'd be
about?
fucking brilliant. It's a guy called John Tyndall. It's a speech he made back in 2004, I think it was, in Louisiana.
Yeah. MC, you're gonna love it. He's introduced by David Duke. It's fucking epic.
Yeah. Dynamite stuff.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear that. Like, you got to listen to it beforehand. You know, I mean, all of you have got to listen to it before you know, and then just go at it and just deconstruct it, see what you think. It'd be funny as hell.
Well, anybody introduced by David Duke has my attention. You know, I'm not necessarily going to agree, but you know, I'll watch.
You got half a show just out of the introduction. You got half a show going right there. Depends on how much you want to cut it up.
And then he was what, the National British whatever
BNP, yeah. Well, he was the National Front, and then he created the BNP, the British National Party.
And then that morphed into UKIP, I hear. So now you know.
No, really, that one, the BNP, there was different portions of it went off to the EDL and then the UKIP too. But yeah, it kind of just got it lost its intensity and it got diluted into different parties. But yeah.
Oh, but this is the pure form that we're gonna cover tomorrow.
Yeah, you look at that's like, you know, the pure heroin before it gets cut.
All right, nice. We don't want no cut.
Where's the link at?
I'll send it to you. I got that.
Yeah, throw it in Discord, Cab.
I will. I'll make sure he's got it.
All right, so John Brown was a terrorist, Lincoln was a tyrant, Grant was a drunk, and Sherman was a psycho. Anything else, you guys?
And states don't have any sovereignty, so that's all good.
Okay,
oh yeah, yeah.
Go with that, Jefferson was a cross-dresser.
That's okay. That's just like, you know,
Jackson
was a cross-dresser,
was a lunatic. Okay.
He was a lunatic that did great.
And Bedford Forrest was a murdering savage.
Hey, we will talk about Fort Pillow, sir. Like that will come up soon. I disagree with you.
If you want to play that, I'll play it with you.
And I want to go.
And Mosby was a freaking terrorist as well.
Oh yeah.
Who?
Why don't you throw fucking Jesse James under the bus?
Jesse James got what he deserved, a bullet in the back of the head.
Back of the head while you put up a picture frame, that is what he deserved.
I'm sorry.
As opposed to clapping
back of the head
when you're watching a play.
Oh,
well, it depends. If your hats are, you know, interfering with the fucking show, yeah.
Well, wait a minute. Yeah, was Jesse wearing an annoying ass top hat, and did he free the slaves?
See, it could be good reason. He could have been antagonized.
God damn it! I'm horrible.
There you go. I put it in side chat there for you, MC. You got the link to that speech.
John Tyndall.
But yeah, no, it's gonna be good. I haven't watched the whole thing yet, but I'm going to. All right. The original topic was John Brown. Any last thoughts on John Brown, Cabbage and MC?
Nope.
Freedom fighter.
All right. Do you believe he was a freedom fighter, or was he a terrorist?
No, I don't.
I would argue he was a terrorist.
I think he was self-indulgent, who just going around slashing white people.
MC, terrorist or freedom fighter?
John Brown, he was a terrorist.
So he deserved what he got in Virginia.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
All right. Well, This is one of the few times MC and I agree. Anything else you guys want to bullshit about? I'm not necessarily tired. I'm just, I think we're done with this topic. So, anything else, or should we just end it?
Well, I gotta say, I just find it interesting that, you know, MC can't see the parallels here with, you know, sovereignty in Europe. And I think it's fascinating because there are so many elements about it which are exceptionally similar. Which is, you join the club, you can't get out. Once you've done it, now you need permission to leave, which is like Article 50 and everything else.
Nation state.
Yes, but exactly, that's exactly what the nation state of Europe has become. You see,
Well,
you don't know nothing about Europe. Shut up, and you don't have an opinion. Apparently.
All right.
Yes, and the Articles of Confederation have also been done with Europe. That's one of the interesting things, that we have so many parallels that you don't seem to recognize.
Well, in MC, our states are individual countries that came into a compact pretty much. King George had to sign a treaty with all 13 colonies individually for a reason.
That's not what it became the United States.
No, yes, it is. See, this is where the argument comes down to. This is where it all boils down to, is the very origin of our
Confederation are not what we're arguing about, because the Articles of Confederations were no longer in existence.
Because they were violently overthrown by a bunch of politicians that were sent there to fix them, not replace them.
Well, they did not put a gun to people's head when every frickin' place
they overthrew them, and they created their own compact. I believe Delaware didn't even join until 3 years after it was already
the
signed.
Constitution of the United States did not become active until every frickin' state either joined it or didn't.
Exactly, and this is why it makes me feel like the federal, system is so much like like the friggin' mafia or whatever. Like you said, I agree with you, man. It's like the fucking mafia taking over.
Aspects of this. There are certain aspects of how it has turned out that I would agree with you about, but not when it comes to the Civil War. Civil War is a different situation.
No, I believe that's the pivot point. I believe that's when it all went to shit. That's my argument.
No, it was
the Civil War was the pivot point.
You've got some grandiose view of what was going on in the United States prior to the Civil War. Then.
What? A grandiose view about Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson throwing off the federal bank and giving power to the state.
You tend to forget the rest of the things that were going on. You didn't mention Polk.
But that's the thing I don't get is because most of the states are just getting on with their own lives, right?
No, but you never mentioned.
You didn't talk about the Trail of Tears. You didn't talk about. I mean,
I also didn't bring up Calhoun and nullification. Shall we bring that up? I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can argue about.
But it still comes down to the same thing.
Nullification is the basis for the separation.
And the argument always has been is when you talk about the United States and the structure of the U.S. Constitution, and if you're going to be honest to the structure of the U.S. Constitution, then you have to recognize, all right, where it can do things and where it can't. Now,
but the only reason.
When you talk about the surrency of the legislature, all right, and how the legislature, what's happened with it, things like that. Yes, there are a lot of things that you and I probably would agree with going down the road, right? But when you talk about it specifically with regards to the Civil War, okay, and whether or not this had to have power over it, okay, if nothing else, all right, you could have petitioned and then sit up there and at the same time launched a lawsuit to see whether or not it would have been overturned in the Supreme Court.
Well, that's why they never wanted to. No, wait a minute. Jefferson Davis never took a pardon. He wanted to be tried. You know why, MC? Because he wanted to argue the legality of
and at his trial, and he
never got tried. No, he wasn't.
Yeah, he did.
No, he was pardoned. He was given a rich guy paid for his release. He was given freedom, and then they never tried him.
I do believe he was tried. He was in prison after his trial.
No, he was in prison before the trial, and that's when the Pope actually sent him a crown of thorns. The Pope, dude, the fucking Pope had his back. I care about
the Jesuits. The Jesuits sent their message.
No, but You never want to argue
Sided
about
with the South.
Calhoun.
What does that tell you, Cabbage?
You never want to argue.
Well, that's a very good point. Yeah, which is odd because we were fucking supporting them, and we're bloody Protestants. So.
But you never.
So it shows you there's no love lost between allies.
But you never want to argue about Calhoun, and the only reason he ever argued nullification was it was an other option compared to separation.
It was a different viewpoint, and I'm not going to argue that viewpoint.
And Calhoun argued. Go ahead. Sorry, sir.
Sorry, I can't talk right now.
Okay, you can't talk, then I can. Calhoun argued that nullification.
He's getting stoned again.
No,
MC.
see, Calhoun argued that nullification was a better process because it forestalled separation or secession. He believed it was an argument to be made within the Union. But if nullification would not work and the argument no longer mattered, then he was for separation. And it was always within the purview of the states that secession was legal. It was taught in West Point up until very shortly after Robert E. Lee graduated. So that would be in the 1850s or 1840s. It was common law. It was known throughout the states. And that's where it's now a difference nowadays. No longer is secession viable. No longer is it legal.
Right.
That argument was not settled by words, sir. That argument was settled by force of arms.
Well,
that doesn't make it right.
And who started with the force of arms?
I would argue Lincoln. You will argue South Carolina. We'll go through that later. That is.
Hang on, no, I'm interested. I mean, who fired the first shot? Who was it?
Technically, it was South Carolina. I argue.
Okay, well, you fucked up, mate.
No,
sorry.
No, I argue that the South had peacekeepers in Washington. No, wait. The South had peacekeepers in Washington, which Lincoln would not see. He did not recognize them. Which, why would he? If he recognized them, then he recognized the South. I get that. But he also was told, hey, if you don't resupply the fort, they'll be okay and nobody will fire on them. If you do, then the South will fire upon the fort. And Lincoln said, let them fire. And he sent the ships up the river to resupply Fort Sumter. And he sent the fucking gunships to stop.
Okay, so it was an act of provocation. You're saying it was an act of provocation.
I am saying
it was an act of seize federal property.
No, it was a maneuver. No, it was a maneuver to start the war. And you know what? They offered to buy said federal property.
Doesn't matter if you offered to buy it. It doesn't mean they had any obligation to sell it or anything.
It was state property.
Why were they offering to buy it?
Because they wanted to be respectful and leave the Union on a good note. No, I'm serious.
The fact
That's what they wanted to do.
If you were respectful, you wouldn't have fired first.
If they weren't respectful, they'd have just taken it. So I got to agree with that. It's a, at least it's a gesture. Come on, you can't deny it's a good gesture.
We had peacekeepers there. He would not.
In other words, hold on. You can't deny the fact they put a gun to somebody's head. They said, "Well, we'll sell it to you or else." And basically, when the person said, "Well, screw you, I'm not selling," they did seized it by force. The mafia does that all the time.
Well, exactly. Which is exactly what the North did to the South later, right?
Exactly. No, then that's what they did then. Abraham Lincoln said, "Okay, we will resupply. They'll fire upon us. I don't think you should do that," said Secretary of War. Not Stanton. It was the guy before him. And he fired him. He replaced him with Stanton and did it anyway. What does that tell you? Tells you that the administration itself said it was a bad fucking idea.
No, it tells you that
he had
It tells you that freaking swamp creature had to go. Just like Kobe.
About conciliary.
No.
It's a conciliary that had to go.
No, it tells you that Lincoln wanted the war. He would get it any way possible.
No, it was not
He wanted
any
that
way
war.
possible. If he wanted the war that badly, he could have instantly started
MC.
sending troops down.
MC.
Actually, that's true, because if he'd have just done it off the whim, then he could have
No,
just
but-
totally surprised the
no.
South, and they wouldn't have had
No,
a
but
chance
let's
anyway.
no,
He'd have
let's
just,
listen to
like, fuck it.
reason. Let's listen to reason.
Then you
MC.
wouldn't have had a chance.
If
No.
you had to listen to reason, you never would have fired.
No, listen here. Virginia
By the way-
did not leave the war. Or Virginia did not leave the Union when Fort Sumter was fired upon. You know when Virginia left the Union? When Lincoln
Doesn't
called
matter.
up for 40,000 troops from Virginia
So, in
to
other words,
invade the Deep
when,
South.
hold on. In other
And
words,
you know what they
Lincoln,
said? No, you
Lincoln
hold on.
did not sit up there and call up troops.
He did.
Not he did. Hold on. He did
That's
not
why
call up,
Virginia left.
He did not call up. Hold on. He did not call up troops until the South started firing.
No. Okay, Fort Sumter happened. He maneuvered the
Okay.
South to fire.
In
He
other
got
words,
the war
If
he
was,
wanted.
if he wanted
He
that
got the war he
ahead-
wanted.
If he wanted
He
that
He
war
got the
ahead of time,
engagement he
could have
wanted. He
immediately
got the
called up-
engagement he wanted in order to justify
Exactly.
the action.
No, and there's been
No.
presidents all through history that have done the same thing. Kennedy tried to do it at the Bay of Pigs. He wanted to invade Cuba.
Yes, exactly. And that didn't work out too
Bay
well.
Pig-
did it?
we can have a big pigs discussion some other time because it was not him trying. I won't even go into that.
No, but conceptually, I agree. It was the same sort of thing. You know, like you goad somebody into a position where they have to
No, they were
respond. So
clean.
therefore, you get the
No,
response you want. Therefore, you can then and say, and then you
Well,
can
no.
claim that you got
If
the
we're
moral high ground.
They weren't. Hold
MC.
on, Cabbage. They weren't
Yes,
being
they were.
goaded into anything.
Yes,
This
they
was
were.
a freaking federal fort. It had
No,
always
MC.
been a federal fort.
Yes,
No,
but they've
hold on.
already offered
Let me
to
explain
pay
this
for
to
it.
Cabbage first. So it doesn't. If you recognize that it's a federal fort, then you can't sit up there and go pay for it or else.
No, but MC, if the South allowed that fort to be resupplied, they are allowing the federal governance in
No,
their
they were allowing
territory.
themselves
At that
time
point,
to
they
actually.
cannot do
hold on.
it. And
They could have.
Lincoln-
Hold on.
Yeah,
Hold on
but
a
did
second,
they
Maddox,
recognize
because
it?
what
I mean,
they could have
surely
done
you
at that
have a
point-
recognition, don't you? Isn't there
They
a
could have done-
recognition?
up to the point where that bullet was fired, you had the option of going through the legal process. You could
Yes,
have
but
gone
don't you?
through
Yeah,
court
but doesn't the
system.
state have the right to recognize the ownership of whatever? I mean, surely they
It
could
still
have
has.
just compulsory.
Once
Couldn't they have
you
compulsory
can't-
purchased it back into
No,
the state or whatever? I mean,
the
they
state
could have done that
cannot
anyway. Why not?
compulsorily. The state cannot compulsorily, all right, take over federal land.
Do you
Yeah, but-
understand how
See,
many
but if it's
rebel
federal, then
rousers
it means
were-
it's not theirs anyway. So where's the sovereignty? Again, I've got this real conflict. I just don't get it. Where
Well,
you know,
it's
like,
just it's
it's
the same-
look, it's
the
either their
same-
land or it isn't. Is it within
It's
the
the
border?
same
of the
issue that we
within the
have.
state?
I realize it's confusing, but it's the same issue we have when we talk about reservations within the United States and Indian reservations.
Well, okay, now you're a reservation. Holy shit, you just got you got relegated madly.
No. Yeah, but I mean, seriously, if they would allow that fort to be resupplied, they
By
would
the
have
way,
said,
he was
"Hey,
on trial. He was on trial. Okay. Jefferson Davis did go on trial. It was during the trial that Andrew Johnson pardoned everyone, which made the trial moot.
okay." There was also a rich New Yorker that paid for him to be freed. If you
Actually,
want to look a little bit more, I think you'll find that also.
the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court gave the Davis team an interesting argument for dropping the treason case, but the case was still going to go forward. It probably would have ended up in the Supreme Court, but it never did.
And it
And
should
all-
have. It would have.
For the most part, though, it would have centered on the 14th Amendment. In which case, to be honest, there's a lot of ways it could have gone at that point. So it's hard to say what the outcome of that was going to be. There was no way of knowing.
Well, I would have loved to actually hear an argument at the Supreme Court level for secession. I think
Well,
that
you
would
can read the
have.
transcripts. You can read the transcripts. They're available on
I'm talking about
Thomas Jefferson,
what if.
.gov and things.
Yeah, but he's talking about a what if.
No, but you got they are transcripts.
the whole decision that you want to talk about, all right, as far as whether or not this could have been settled and what the rights were, what the right things were, what states' rights were, etc. All right, ended the moment South Carolina opened fire. Up to that point, you had all sorts of legal maneuvering room. Up to that point, you could have gone and petitioned the Supreme Court. Up to that point, the Confederacy could have done a number of things. The fact is that they chose not to wait.
No,
Do you believe?
It shows the fact that they were going to defend their land and they were going to say this is sovereign
No,
territory.
they had nothing
I
to
think
do
that's
with
what it
defending
was.
their
So the
land.
thing is, I mean, come on, what had they done up until that point in order to prevent it to begin with? It wasn't like it just happened on a whim, was it? The North knew what was, what the southern position was, right?
In more ways than one, it did happen on a whim because a bunch of freaking people got butthurt that the wrong freaking president got elected.
Wow.
Yes, but the thing is, but the North knew what the the South's position was, right? It's not like
Abraham
it was just,
Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln hadn't
did not have a single vote
installed as president yet.
So
when
what?
South Carolina voted to secede.
MC, he was the first ever regional president. He didn't have a single vote from any southern state. Zero. None.
It doesn't.
That matters.
So he was not. Yeah, and no representation without tax. No taxation without representation.
No, even Donald Trump.
They voted. They lost.
Even Donald Trump had a vote from Oregon. Even Donald Trump had a vote from Oregon. Okay, Abraham Lincoln had zero from the southern states.
What electoral member voted from Oregon voted for Trump?
Probably the Republican guy. It's not Ron Wyden. It's the other douchebag. But
but then they violated their own state's rules.
But the fact remains,
within the electoral
there was
zero
Southern votes. Not the Southern Democrats. Not anybody voted for Lincoln in the Southern states.
No, there literally, like it or not, there were votes for him. They weren't even close to between the other two, which split the electoral college. Once again, we don't vote for a popular vote.
Comes to the electoral college. I keep saying this. See, I said that earlier on. Apparently, I don't know shit though, so that's fine.
And what happened was you had with the Republican Party for the first time your viable third party that you find so precious. The Republicans were the viable third party.
Well, at that time, weren't they the Whigs?
It was the Whigs and the Democrats prior to that.
Yeah, I don't know nothing, mate. I'm fucking retarded.
Yeah, you are. I'm glad you finally realized that now.
Yeah, I just needed you to just let me know. It's a rude awakening.
Well, you're welcome.
All right, so fair warning. My wife told me she's going to bed, so I'm not allowed to yell anymore. So I'm gonna yell extra.
Ramp it up. Hey, listen, she's the earner. Don't piss her off. Jesus.
Once again.
Oh yeah, my Patreon money ain't gonna keep us afloat. That's for sure.
There you go. I can't keep doing that every month.
A resupply of a federal fort. There was no impending reason why, no direct reason why the South had to be in a hurry to sit up there and go to war the way they did. Absolutely none. They could have easily gone to
but there was, if they didn't want the, what was being imposed upon them, like in the removal.
I don't like this idea. I don't like this idea that the South caused the war. Lincoln called up the troops well before he even fired on Fort Sumter. He had already, yes, he did. He had already called up
otherwise
troops.
He couldn't have been. He couldn't responded.
They didn't respond. They responded with the Navy. The Navy, okay.
Yeah, supported by the fucking French.
The Navy was always been a larger force due to the way the Constitution talks about the Navy. All right, so they've always had extra fund. The Navy's always had a lot of extra funding than the Army.
Yeah, suck your freedom, Fry.
But the fact is that there did not need to be a war. There could have been an interesting. It would have been an interesting legal challenge that could have even decided it in Mad Dodge's favor, all right, as far as the Confederacy in the favor, all right, if they would have gone through that process. But they decided not to go through that process. They had already voted to secede and were already seizing federal territory before Lincoln had even been installed as president.
Well, no, and your key word there is voted. They voted independently within their state.
They can't. Once again, you guys were in a hurry to fire the first shot.
Well, were they in a hurry? No, I think that's provocative. Were you in a hurry to fire the first shot? I don't know. I think that's a provocative term to use. I mean, they may have fired the first shot. And if you did, like I said, you kind of fucked up there because you gave them but like I said, that's like, you provoke people into something. You throw the gun down at somebody. No, it's like that. What was it? What was the film?
This is like
hang on a second, MC. Hang on a second, MC. It's like, the cowboy who comes up and he throws the gun at the kid's, the kid's feet and says, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, and then he picks it up.
That has nothing to do with this, Cabbage, because this situation came to a head simply because the person who got elected president, they didn't like.
Not only did they didn't like him.
Yeah, but why didn't they like him? It's because of policies. It's not they didn't like him.
He hadn't even gotten installed to know what those policies were going to be.
The policies they didn't like. The man was immaterial. It wouldn't matter if it was him or anyone else. So the policies were the issue.
The South knew his policies, and his tariff was going to jump 150% from the tariff of abomination, and we knew that.
Do you have?
I have his words. I have his fucking words, and he was a study of Henry Clay. Do you know who Henry Clay is?
And his Senate, which requires a tariff to be imposed.
Do you know who Henry Clay is?
Yes, which was the equivalent of what was being done by Britain at the time, because that's one of the major reasons for the revolt was the different tax tariffs and things like that.
But the difference was that they had representation in the Senate. They could have stopped.
We did not. No, because the population of the North was 3-1, and they were subjugating the South through tariffs. That is a fact.
The South was sitting up there with the tariffs that were being imposed. All right, were not strangling the South like you say they were. All right, the South was doing just fine.
Really, their exports weren't being taxed 100%. Their exports weren't being taxed.
If an export was being taxed, it's because your own congressmen, specifically your senators, allowed it.
Not ours.
Voted
they didn't.
Hold on. The
South had as many senators as the North did.
If you're saying that everything was just fine and dandy and everyone was having a wonderful time, then why did a shot ever get fired? I don't get it. There's got to be something which was not quite going the right way.
The problem was if everything was fine and dandy, you wouldn't have had bleeding Kansas before the Civil War.
Well, see, his argument is that slavery
had a white guy
coming to a head.
Lincoln didn't even make the argument of slavery. The South didn't leave over slavery. Lincoln never made that argument.
You can say that all you want, but that was the reality.
No, Lincoln never made that argument. He made the argument for higher tariffs. He was a Whig.
Hold on. Whether Lincoln was making that argument or not is immaterial. All right? The people in the North, when they rallied around it, it was for abolition. You know that as well as I do.
New York rallied around that.
It wasn't just New York. It went all the way
that's why
up
they
and
down the city.
It was from Indiana. It was from Illinois. It was everywhere.
Yeah, no, but New York was totally behind it. That's why they rebelled for 2 weeks. It needed the Union Army to bear down on them, to put down said rebellion. Because, it was about slavery. Fuck off. I don't buy it.
You can say you can ignore it all you want. It was the underlying cause of this.
No, the North was not majority abolitionists. Even the historians will tell you that. Even Ken Burns, that lying motherfucker, will tell you that.
You can say that. You can say that. Then how come they voted to be non-slave?
They didn't vote that way. Did Delaware? Hey, how about Delaware? Hey, Delaware, Maryland. Hey, how about them?
Delaware and Maryland are two of the exceptions. But
how about West Virginia? West Virginia.
West Virginia was not did not exist. Hold on, West Virginia didn't exist then. Okay.
What about? Oh yeah, By the way, that's another beef I have. Secession is bullshit, right? Secession is illegal. By the way, welcome West Virginia to the Union. Fuck off, Lincoln. Fuck off.
We're not gonna argue that point.
I will. I will. God damn it.
Not right now, because you need context of what had happened when you talk about West Virginia. All right. But if we're going to sit up there and talk about whether or not these people were fighting against slavery or not, then you can't deny the fact that the majority of those populations, yes, were abolitionists.
Bullshit. Now, they weren't. Look at the state I live in. I live in the state of Oregon. We had a senator die in the Civil War, right? But you know what our Constitution said? No black man can settle here. No black man can settle here.
When did Oregon get admitted as a state?
1860 even, or 1861. Like right there at the Civil War. But still, in their Constitution, it says no black man may settle here. They did not care about the freedom of the black man. Don't tell me that. This is Black History Month. Don't tell me the Union cared. Fuck you.
Actually, they were granted statehood in 1859. They were granted statehood.
15. Oh, I was a year off, really. You're going to fuck with me about a year.
No, I'm just wanted to be specific. That's all.
Okay, I was just saying. Like, you're going to fuck with me about a year. God damn it. I'm pretty close off the top of my head.
Well, actually, thinking about this, the Black History thing, and the freedom of the black people. I mean, how many of them fought for the South, and how many fought for the North?
Quite a few fought for the South, whether they want you to believe it or not. I have numbers, and I can look them up real quick if you want.
There was no black regiments that fought as.
Yes, there was.
There was in the South.
Not that fought.
And they were given the option. They got their freedom if they fought.
Maybe they didn't fight. You're right. They organized the regiments in Richmond, and then Richmond fell. Fair enough. I'll give you that.
Okay, so how many northern regiments were there of black people fighting?
One or two. One or two. And the ones that did fight,
approximately
Pillow, and they got killed. Forrest didn't really like them at Fort Pillow. Just saying.
It's back to pillows again. Was it pillow fight?
Oh, it was a little bit more than a pillow fight.
I suggest you read about some of the personal accounts of some of the survivors.
Well, I'll read General Forrest's account. The rest of them can fuck off.
You coward.
No, seriously, I mean, I'm asking. I mean, how many people in Southport for their freedom, and how many of the northern blacks were fighting for the freedom of the southerns? I mean, I know we had the people who went across, on the, they managed to get across the borders using the tunnels and things like that, like Palestinians or whatever. But I mean, what was the real, fight? I mean, what was the ratio of people fighting for the blacks compared to the blacks fighting for the blacks?
Honestly, I would say about 50-50. That's how I would honestly look at it from the numbers I've seen. MC,
according to this archive.gov, and of course, this is, you got to take this for,
we'll take it with a pinch of salt.
Well, I mean, it comes close, but the thing is that it's hard to actually, the way documents were back then, all right, that approximately 179,000 black men, which was 10% of the Union Army, served as soldiers, all right, in the U.S. Army. Now, what is that compared to? Considering that the majority that blacks make up approximately 10 to 15% of the population, but we're concentrated in the South, quite a few from a percentage wise.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm saying compared. No,
Yeah.
I'm talking numbers.
Yeah, but where's the Confederate?
We're not talking GDP.
Yeah,
I
do you
mean,
have
you know,
the-
number. I mean, like comparative. I mean, like in terms of the
Yeah, do you have the
population.
Confederate numbers, or do I need to grab my book that I have over here?
I'm just wondering. I mean, it's not. I'm not taking the piss here. I'm just really interested in, like, you know. I mean, apparently, white men never did nothing good. So, you know, and apparently,
in the north, the colored troops that joined the northern fight were at a higher rate than what their population was. Now, as far as
Because there was free black men fighting for the Confederacy. There were slaves that were
you can't have free ones. No such thing.
Yeah.
They were all slaves. That's the whole point I'm saying about the slave. You know, like how many people were fighting? You know, relative.
All right. First of all, the blacks were approved to fight on March 13th, 1865, which was already what was it? 1 month later, everything fell.
Well, you know what? You want to laugh, but if you argue that they were fighting for slavery, and at the end of the war,
I didn't say that they were fighting for.
They gave up their slavery to fight for independence. Then that means something.
I was saying I never said that the South was fighting to keep slaves per se. I said slavery was the issue that drove the North, and whether the South were fighting for it or not is immaterial.
No, it didn't drive the North. I'm sorry, it didn't. You see, I still didn't. I can't believe that it was actually the idea. You know, this moral grandstanding that decided it. It was industrial. It was material. It was monetary. I can't believe that it was just, oh, we're so upset because some black people are working.
No, okay.
I do not believe it. I do not fucking believe it one iota. I really don't.
Then you're ignoring what slavery allowed. Okay,
it allowed certain companies to make more money than others. It was a monetary thing.
That's not what I'm referring to. This is something that I've said many times. In many ways, the U.S. Civil War was a war between two different cultures. But that culture,
that I agree with. Yeah.
Okay, but that culture in the South couldn't exist without slavery. So when we talk, this is why when you talk about it, when you discuss this and say, okay, it's a culture war where you have divergent cultures, I can agree with that. However, the reason the cultures were diverging had everything to do with slavery. Because
that was the thing that was made to be the divergent point, right?
Well,
that was the one that Lincoln put into the ground because he already admitted it. No, he said he wouldn't have cared if it, about the slaves, right?
That's not what he said.
But he made it. Well, he did. Come on.
You keep saying he wouldn't get cared. That's bullshit.
No, I was saying that he said himself that, if I didn't have to release a slave, then,
If I could say, he said...
Right, to save the Union, right. So the Union, he'd happily save the Union. And
to say he didn't care. And
come on. You can translate that, you can interpret it in as many ways as you want, right?
Yeah,
it would mean that
the only way that you'd interpret it is he didn't care about black people, which is nonsense.
Well, no.
I'm just saying he was indifferent. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that he didn't care.
No, but what I'm saying is nonsense. Is you saying the whole antebellum South was based upon slavery? No, they are Irish Celts. I mean,
the culture of the South. Okay, caused the divergence between the North and the South was created because of the rural economies created in the South due to slavery versus the agrarian and soon-to-be industrial societies created in the North.
I don't believe that. I think it was more about the fact that, the North didn't like the laissez-faire attitude of the South because the South pretty much, looked after itself. The North was under control. And the South was very much like it was a very laissez-faire attitude.
If you believe that, You
Look,
read
if
the
you look
American
at Adam
papers
Smith,
at the
right?
time.
Adam Smith, when
If you read
if
the
you look at
papers at
Adam
the
Smith's
time,
writings,
Cabbage,
right?
if
When
you read
he
the
went
papers at
back,
the Cabbage, if you read the papers at the time, you would understand. If you read papers in the
Mhm.
South, you papers in the North. They were constantly
yeah, and if you
talking.
read what
They were
Adam
talking
Smith was
about
writing,
slavery. To say both the
yes, and
South
this
and
is,
the North were discussing
you
slavery.
see, you won't listen
Slavery
to
was
shit,
the
will you? No,
primary
because
issue.
I'm not allowed to have an opinion.
You can have an opinion, but
Right.
your opinion
If
better
you
be
read
based
the
on
Adam
facts.
Smith, if you read Adam Smith and the points that he makes later on, you know, like in his writings with his that all of the issues that he had with. I mean, he was the one who promoted the whole concept of the Southern economic system, right? And they ended up with the company stores. I mean, it's the old story, right? He recognized that it was counterproductive, and so did the people at the time. They knew that this wasn't, it didn't work, which is why you ended up with, the people were giving their freedom because they weren't, they weren't needed on the plantations or whatever. You can get an overproduction of slaves as much as you can get an overproduction of, cotton. So
Well, no,
and they
and
went off
also,
and they actually had their own cotton. They actually went off and became independent. They were autonomous. The idea that, all black people in the South were, slaves is just fucking nonsense. That's not the case.
well,
And that was
no,
way before that like the first shot was fired. That every black person in the South was not a slave. That is nonsense.
well, no, and also, if you look at the
They were
settlement,
freeholders.
well, look at the settlement in the United States. In the North, you have the Anglo-Saxons. In the South, you have the Celtic Irish,
Oh,
and
so-
and the French in my home state of Louisiana, especially.
yeah. See,
But
fucking
if you
cage.
look at the dichotomy between the states, you can see the tension. It was going to build up. You had the mercantile North, which were Anglo-Saxons, and you had the agrarian South, who were Celtic Irish and French, Indian, all these
There was
other
not
things.
nearly the amount of Irish that you're claiming it. And as far as the Anglo-Saxons, you had just as many in the South as you did. The division was
No,
over slavery.
look at the
Yes, but the thing is, at the end of the day, is what was this cultural thing that you're talking about? You see, you said it was a cultural issue.
It is,
and-
because what you're seeing is in the South, because slavery was so intertwined with their rural lifestyle. That when we talk about rural, most people think of regular farms. You're not talking plantations, right? You never had plantations. You don't have, even today, you don't have plantations where food is involved.
No, you have prairies.
Okay.
Same thing.
No, you don't. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
you
Same thing.
do. You have prairies. You have the fucking prairies. It's just big, large open areas of just one, monocultures.
Okay, but what I'm talking about is the divergence in the societies themselves. The North and the South were starting to separate culturally. And the reason for that was because of the lifestyle that slavery created versus areas where slavery wasn't created.
Well, then they should have been allowed to separate. What's wrong with that?
You can argue about they should have been allowed. They may have been allowed if they wouldn't have opened fire.
No, and we will get to that.
You see, this is the thing with Brexit. This is what I'm saying is, you can't get away, and it's gonna end up, with somebody crossing swords somewhere. Because once you got power, you don't want to release it because the federal government, I mean, they must have been getting resources and things like that. Or, I mean, basically, it's control, right? It's ownership. It was an ownership issue. It's got nothing to do with this idea of some kind of ego or, or even, I mean, this is pure ownership and, in the idea of possession. It's possession issues. That's really what it is. It's got to be.
It isn't a possession.
Land ownerships and things like that. Who owned most of the land down, south of the, because I don't know this. I'm asking this purely off the top of my head. But who owned most of the land?
Private. Most of the land was owned.
Yeah, but who were they? I mean, who were they funded by? Was it J.P. Morgan? Was it, which fund was with?
It wasn't a fund. What are you talking about? It was private ownership of land. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but they buy the land off whom? Who'd you buy land off?
They basically settled it, and then would buy it from each other.
They settled it, and then the companies come in and they buy it. Right?
No,
and you have companies come in. You do.
No, that's not what it was like before the Civil War.
Yeah, that isn't. It was pretty much private ownership. They had land deeds that went back before the fucking revolution and shit, in most cases. So
they are just pure land ownership. So there's no tertiary like ownership that from bonds or from mortgages or anything like that. There's not.
And the real difference was the tariffs and how they propped up the North on the back of the South.
So it makes it even less viable as to why the North should have any fucking claim on the South.
They didn't. That was not a claim on the South.
Well, then how can you? Why would you want ownership of it then?
The carpetbaggers would differ on that one, but we've gone about.
Yeah, but carpetbaggers—that's the point I was thinking of, because that's what I mean. The carpetbaggers, the investment people, the ones who want to rape and pillage on investments and things like that.
Kind of stuff happened after the war.
That's right.
You see, so that happened after. So therefore, beforehand, what was the justification for it?
The justification for what?
Justification was
for ownership.
They don't want.
I mean, what is your justification for ownership? Right? Normally, ownership is.
What?
Well, of the state.
They didn't care at that point. They just invaded and took, because how dare the South leave and not pay taxes?
Open fire on a federal fort.
Bloody hell, MC. We've gone about 3 hours. Any last thoughts, you guys, before we wrap it up? It's about 1:30 my time. So.
No.
Cabbage, any last things you want to say before we wrap it up?
I say the South should rise again.
Yeah, and I say we're going to continue this conversation, MC. Like I said, I want to do a series of this. We started with before the Civil War this time. Maybe next time we will start, at fucking in South Carolina. What do you think?
That's fine.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Tomorrow, the Red Eye will be on at 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I hope to see you guys there. We'll be covering a speech that Cabbage sent us. Should be fun. Introduction by David Duke. Ooh, should be great. There's 2 people here, so you guys have a good night and good luck. We're out of here.